Episode 202 of The Racist War on Everything, and what is more than likely going to be our final episode of the year. Myself and Nolsey with you, and
Hello.
we were actually supposed to give you this episode last week, but I thought, what the hell, Parliament is finishing up, National Cabinet's meeting, Insiders is done for the year. 7:30 might still have a few eps to go, but, you know, for all intents and purposes, all major policy announcements and that have been put out of the way so that we can all enjoy the Christmas period. So, yeah, basically there won't be any more, not anymore, but much more political news for the rest of the year. So, yeah, I don't know about you,
Long one to finish off with.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of glad to have it that way, because we all need a politics detox from time to time, I think is very true. Okay. Well, anyway, so we are covering about a week and a half of material, meaning that this might be a little longer than usual, but also just like the amount of political news in the past week and a half has been a lot. We've had National Cabinet, we've had the NDIS report, we've had Annastacia Palaszczuk leaving. We've still got lots to go on immigration and those announcements by Claire O'Neill the other day. So, let me start with the National Cabinet. So, follow my trusty ABC link. So this was last week on Wednesday. And if you don't know, National Cabinet is basically just where the Prime Minister meets all the premiers and chief ministers. So it's like the big boots of the political game all meet in Canberra. And the main thing they actually were meeting to talk about was the NDIS. Yeah. We'll get into the details of that soon. But basically, to make the NDIS less costly, Albo wants the states and the territories to foot some of the bill. So, yeah, it's just unsustainable at the national level, the Commonwealth level. So the states have to kind of come in with their own resources. Now, there was a similar thing with health, actually. So they have accepted a $1.2 billion payment from the Commonwealth to help, quote, take the pressure off hospitals. But then again, you know, there's a bit of give and take in terms of what they're willing to do here. What else? Oh, yeah, of course. National Firearms Registry. They've pretty much agreed on that, and you're going to get it, guys. I hate to tell you. We'll talk more about that when we talk about gun rights. And, the GST.
See that fucking coming.
Well, okay, as far as we know, the GST is... The arrangement is basically going to stay how it is. So that's good for news for WA, isn't it? Because we all know what the GST fights are over.
What did the Treasurer call us again? Like fucking little like hermit nation people, little fucking golems with their precious ring or some shit.
Yeah, he said that about Mark McGowan saying, "Oh, my precious," as in because McGowan was the one who negotiated that. Probably the best thing he ever did, actually. But I forgot about that. Yeah, he did say something like that where he was trying to quote Lord of the Rings or something. But yeah, basically whenever they bring up the GST, it's just everyone else saying WA is getting too much. Even though we actually only get, like 60 cents in the dollar, something like that, whereas Tasmania gets like $1.25, you know. It's just because of the fact we make so much tax money off of commodities, because we are the mining state.
We sell rocks and rock-related accessories.
That's right. So yeah, not really any change there, other than what they did say was they're extending its no worse off guarantee. So even if you don't like your deal right now, you can simply be guaranteed that you won't be shortchanged any further. I don't think that's much consolation to the
I
agreed
don't. I don't think
states.
that's going to fucking stand.
No, it's not. And this will be an issue every time National Cabinet meets. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay, we'll go to the NDIS first. So, what you had here was a review. We've been talking about this ongoing process for a while because currently, I think the NDIS is 13.5% of the Commonwealth budget. Now, the goal was this goal existed before this report came out, is to get spending down to where it's only 8% of the Commonwealth budget in 3 years.
I love the kind of lifeboat morality I've been hearing on the ABC about this, about like who should they throw off the fucking scheme, and everyone's focusing in on autists.
Yes, no, that's been there for a long time, and to be fair, that's a reasonable criticism, because 1/3 of the people on the NDIS are down. It is their primary reason for being on the NDIS, or it is a reason. 1/3. That's a shitload of people. And yeah, look, I won't go on my rant all over again, but like this knee-jerk reaction we have to saying that someone is on the spectrum is the biggest cause of that, And only a doctor has to make the diagnosis. And GPs don't know about this kind of shit. They're general practitioners. They're not trained in this area. Which is why I think, we basically need more public access to psychologists or psychiatrists, at least just for little things like that, for like a 15-minute session, But psychiatry and psychology in Australia is just so rooted in the private sector that it's kind of hard to get it out of there, particularly the way the psychiatrists work. They're like very organized, like the AMA, with their rich persons union, and they just, like any form of government intervention in that field, they just outright reject it. And you think about it, it makes sense because they make a shitload of money. Anyway, all right. So the other thing was, one thing, as you mentioned, was getting people off it in the first place. They keep going on about how that's not part of the deal, but I think it is. Because
it's
if you look at
have to be. Just logistically, it will have to be.
It does. Well, especially with the autism thing, because you're just talking about too many people who are going to end up on it. And even though we have, like a declining fertility rate, that culture of just identifying everyone as on the spectrum is going to make up for that. And not to mention the fact that we just live in a generally sick society anyway. And you're going to have a lot of kids who are growing up with emotional problems, which is caused by a lack of social capital and social cohesion. And then we say, oh, well, he must be autistic.
We'll just pathologize it.
It's again, like, no, society has just broken him down. That's what's happened.
Yeah, again, there's a much bigger issue that no government that follows any kind of ideology relating to neoliberalism, neo-capitalism, etc., would ever be willing to address, because addressing it is admitting fault in their eyes.
Right. Okay, so I hinted this at the beginning. They're trying to get the states and territories to kind of pull their load as well. Now, what this means is they want them to be helped out by other services. So, like I said, maybe you could go to a psychologist instead of getting NDIS support, or a psychiatrist, or some other form of physical therapy or pathology that you can get through the public health system. And they basically want people to be referred to all of those avenues first. And the NDIS is basically last resort, because NDIS is definitely where the government spends the most money.
Well, again, how much is that going to help? Because it's not like that mechanism decreases the amount of capital that these people are going to consume either which way. You're just distributing it over different schemes.
Yes and no. I mean, I might as well talk about this other part of the report that was about shonky dealers. So, while you're correct in saying, they were basically just using the same resources wherever they went, one of the dealers, though, is likely to charge more than another. And
Oh yeah, I
we've all heard
forgot.
it.
I
Yeah,
forgot
remember
about
that?
corruption.
Right. So there's a lot of these deals. What they do is because they know that they've got a government guarantee. Like the customer is their government the government
Their
is
meal
their
ticket.
customer. Therefore, therefore, they know that they can really price gouge, and so they put the price right up because the government just goes, some faceless bureaucrat who signs off on it, and they're like, yeah, okay, we'll buy that. Whereas on another scheme or on like just the normal private market, it would have been a lot cheaper. So if they're able to actually do that, at least just for the first couple of years, palm them off onto other public services, they can eliminate purchasing products and services from these dodgy uh, dealers who inflate prices.
Yeah.
Now, another thing they want to do is they said that within 5 years, they want to just get rid of those shonky dealers altogether. So they've got a system in place. So they say there's. So Bill Shorten says um, that is going to root them out, and that is going to impose severe financial and criminal penalties as well on them. So, okay, that's fine. Good thing.
Let's see it in practice.
Well, yeah, let's see. Um, okay, so the review called for removal of access lists that provide automatic entry to the scheme. So that's including for conditions like autism, diagnosed at level 2 under the DSM of. So that's the book that you use to diagnose mental disorders. So yeah, now Bill Shorten will tell you that's not means testing. I can't really see it any other way. They are basically making it harder to get a diagnosis of something like autism, and who can blame them? So, uh, I don't know if Bill Shorten is going to sort of ease the community anxiety about people getting kicked off the NDIS. He just said, like, bottom line is, if you need it, you'll get it. Okay, what about those people who are kind of a little borderline, you know? And they're
Yeah.
completely convinced that they need it, or that, they need it for their child or their parent, whoever it is. But the NDIS disagrees.
There's
Well, yeah,
no way, again, like, you're basically making this arbitrary line in the sand where like you get this or you don't get this, etc. Like there's no way you can put that line that's going to make everyone in this situation happy. I expect to see like rhetoric like you're just a bunch of bums in the fucking future.
right. Okay, so the current budget is actually at $35 billion. We have 630,000 people on it, which is, a fair percentage, actually.
A nice big old fat chunk.
Yeah, and remember, about one third of them are basically there because of autism or related. Um, so they needed this, and with the budget, well, we did forecast a surplus. I honestly think that's going to be a blip on the radar. The next one will definitely be in deficit because of the fact that the
Mm.
government temporarily was gaining from inflated uh, was gaining from the inflation that occurred on commodities, on raw goods, and they were able to siphon a lot of that GST money and royalties off of it. That's
Well,
not
yeah.
really going to be there the next time, so we can't afford to keep paying for an expensive scheme like the NDIS when we're going to run out of money.
Well, yeah, for like just to put it plainly, like if you're holding on to a rock and you're going through like a period of inflation, the price of the rock, increases, but because you're not selling the rock and no one's buying the rock at that price, like it's basically just numbers at that point. It's completely and utterly fucking meaningless. You haven't turned it into actual capital.
Right, right. Yeah, so I mean, Jim Chalmers kind of got hit in the ass by a rainbow, as Paul Keating would say, and that rainbow's not going to be there come next year.
No.
Oh, right. Now, also, sorry, this should really put it into further context for people. So I mentioned like the costs involved, how many people are on it. Get this. There is a plan. So this is one person who is on a particular plan on the NDIS where the yearly cost to keep them on the plan is nearly $2 million. Okay?
What?
There were some other ones as well. There was another scheme they found that is $1.1 million. Wow, it looks like they are actually taking in as much as prisoners do a year. Actually, even more.
What?
I know. This one I had, like, I read it a couple of times. I was like, did I read that figure correct? Yes. They said it was approaching, so not quite, but approaching $2 million for one
Do
person.
they have him in the golden autism roller or some shit?
I don't know. But look, obviously that must have something to do with those shonky dealers inflating the prices. And
Yeah, I know that I don't see mechanically how you can treat someone even with like a massive disability and it come out to be that price.
Yep. So the NDIS will also no longer pay unregistered providers, and also said that it is not the job of the government to ensure 20 to 40% returns to business providing disability services. So, yeah, like as a way, I guess, to incentivize businesses to get involved with the NDIS, they gave a government guarantee saying your profit margin will be, this amount. So by now, businesses would have learned that there is a lot of money to be made off the NDIS. So that need to provide incentive is long gone. And yeah, you don't need to guarantee any kind of profit margin. So yeah, I don't know why they didn't get rid of that sooner, to be honest. Because yeah, it's quite a lucrative trade actually, if you're able to get on there as a provider. All right. So, immigration. Now, God, really depends on your perspective here.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of back and forth on Twitter about this.
Yeah, so I'll just spell it out as best I can, the way I've understood it. I've tried to read as much on this as I can. So this was announced on, yesterday by the Home Affairs Minister, Claire O'Neill. This is the migration strategy that they said they have been reviewing for the past year or so. Now, she made the point that in the last financial year, immigration peaked, meaning the highest levels we ever had, but that's, every year, that's basically what happens, at 510,000 people. Well, regular listeners to this show would know that I've read figures up to 640,000. So I'd say that 500,000 estimate is actually pretty conservative. Yeah. Anyway, they reckon that the current plan that they've just released is going to bring migration to, quote, normal levels. So in 2024, these financial years I'm going by here, that it should actually fall to 375,000 people. And then by 2025, it should go to 250,000. Now, 250,000 is about the levels we had pre-COVID. As we know, obviously, we had a huge drop during COVID. We had this enormous fucking eclipse of people post-COVID. And now we're said to get it back to just normal levels. So, look, first of all, I'd like to know how they're going to do that. Because, well, let's go through some of the actual concrete changes that they've promised here. So one of them is that they're going to get rid of the 482 visa. So the 482s, if we've got older listeners to this show, maybe they remember the 457 visas and how notorious they were. Basically, they're the most popular temporary work visas. I think they go for about 4 years or so. If you've ever been on a building site where there's a lot of Asians and stuff, yeah. Well, they're on the 482s or what used to be the 457s. Yep. So every time with this class of visa, they've got problems. And again, they're finding problems with the 482 being abused. And so they're going to scrap that and bring another one in. And I'm just going to make a prediction in about 5 years' time from then, they'll scrap that and get another one as well. Because every time they redesign this work visa, something goes wrong with it. And what I mean by that is they bring over too many people on too low pay, people not following the conditions, or simply just lying about fulfilling the conditions when they're not. So definitely a lucrative thing if you're involved in labor hire or if you're a migration agent, something like that. A lot of money to be made off this stuff. And so that's the problem where you've got bad incentives in the system. It's hard to kind of root them out. They're also trying to crack down on visa hopping. So what that is, I heard this term the other day. They want to prevent people from becoming permanently temporary. And what that means is they never leave Australia because they just keep getting on a different temporary visa the whole time.
I've seen that. I've seen people hop sponsors. I've seen people literally go to refugee status in between work visas.
Yeah.
There's like a million different fucking loop-de-loops you can do to fucking reset your standing position. And was it the Home Department?
Home
literally
Affairs.
just Home Affairs Department or Home Affairs literally just does fucking nothing about it.
Well, they say they're going to now.
Yeah, I don't believe them.
Yeah, well, look, as far as I can see, there's not any specifics on what they want to do. They just kind of identified a lot of these areas. And you look through it and you think, okay, yep, I can see that's a good area to identify. But I just want to know exactly what are you going to do about it. So they reckon anyway they're going to make visa hopping harder. But I want to know, does that mean what? There's a certain amount of time or a certain number of times you can apply for a temporary visa? They're not really giving the details on that. Another one, well, look, the area that the demographic of people that they identified as the most troublesome are students. And they're very much the ones who do the permanently temporary thing. They hop from course to course, starting new ones. Very often they'll start a course that is of a lower level of what they actually did before. Like they might do a degree and then all of a sudden they go to some shitty TAFE or technical college to do a Cert 4. And you think, what are you doing that for? Shouldn't you be able to go and get a job now? Or they're getting on the temporary graduate visas, or they're getting on one of the other skill work visas. And then after then, they might go back on a student visa or something like that. And then they tell you that they're at some technical college. And I think Jason Clare said they have a front door, but there's nothing behind. In other words, it's a fake institution that is just there so that you can fill out the paperwork and say that you're a student. But really, you're actually just taking cash in hand work from some dodgy fucker from the same country you're from.
Yeah.
And
I've seen that. I've seen basically like certification courses where it's like, oh, you call up a guy, you pay this amount, and then like maybe you should like this is the maybe part. Maybe you show up like once a fucking week and sit down in a classroom and then do nothing, and then by the end of the term, like, oh look, you've got this piece of paper that says you're qualified to do something, but in all actuality, Monday through Friday, you've just been doing cash in hand jobs and doing your and when you're not doing that, doing like your minimum allotted hours or maximum allotted hours.
And usually all of those people are working together,
Oh yeah.
Like obviously it's it'll look different on paper, but it's like a labor hire guy who knows a migration agent who knows a guy who runs like a fake technical college, and they're all in it together and they're making a shitload of money off it. A shitload of money. Okay, let me just have a look. Okay, so here's actually one of the areas where they've got a specific change, and that is the English language requirement for students, which is the 500 visa. So that is going to go from you need a 6-point score to a 6.5 score. Now, I tell you who's definitely going to vote against this, or at least complain about it, is the Greens, right?
Yes, it's going to be racism.
Yes, because the Greens have targeted this one before. For example, they pointed out that for some other visas, like work visas or whatever, I think it's still like 6 points for most of them. And then they go, oh, well, that's how high it is for university students. And why should we expect them to speak a level of English that university students can? Well, have you ever been to a university with these students? I have. Nolsey has. And we can tell you that their English is fucking terrible. Okay? So just from my own personal experience, I can say, hell yes, you need to raise that score. Okay? it must be a catastrophically too low if, these people can come in and they can barely string a sentence together.
You get one of them, they'll be like in a group of 10, no matter what fucking industry, whether it's like, catering, fucking like back of house chef, construction, etc. You'll get ones that like, they don't speak English, period. And then there's always one that like speaks enough English to make to make the wheels turn.
Right, and that leads me to believe that some of these people must just be faking their English language scores.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, because when you meet the ones who just basically can't speak English at all, it's like, how did you even get that 6 points? It's like you say like hi and bye, and that's about it. Okay, what else?
Hi and bye.
Okay, look, I think that's about the detail we've got thus far. But look, it's not surprising that they're finally announcing this. I might as well mention this now. In housing news, they've made some changes to foreign investment rules. For example, you get slugged with a bigger tax if you've got a property that is empty. So, they're trying to free up the housing market. They have kind of announced these changes towards the end of the year. And, the Greens will maybe say this is xenophobic. Migration reform is against migrants. Foreign investor reform is against foreigners. But
I wonder how popular that actually is going to be with the Green base, because in terms of like they got the cope that like, oh, migrants are not responsible for the housing shortage. It's these damn greedy developer capitalists trying to like hold off and sell at a high price and whatnot, which is just total bullshit if you actually look at the vacancy rates, and development vacancy rates. Holy shit. But the thing is, I've also seen them bellyache about like, oh, like my rent just went up like fucking $200, and like I can't afford to smoke weed and finger my asshole and pay that at the same time. So I wonder actually how popular it's going to be with them, because this is now becoming a serious, it's now actually completely devoid from ideology. It's becoming a serious material issue. Well, it is a serious material issue.
It's crossing class lines, because you've got a lot of inner city trendies who basically, they've decided to live as if they were in New York, which is where you just pay rent all your life. You never own a house. And that's just so you can always stay in the inner city, near the cool clubs and pubs and theaters and all that shit.
Yeah, your studio apartment's starting to look a bit smaller now, isn't it?
Yeah, and by the way, God, I recommend people watch. Claire O'Neill was on 7:30 last night, talking about this, and she actually made the point. Like, it was so weird. She did this total, like what she said was a total contradiction, which was she was going on about the need to take the pressure off housing prices, and she says, "Oh, therefore the government is doing this, and this to make sure that we stem the flow of migration, bring it to normal levels, and that will bring the inflationary pressure off of house prices." And then immediately she goes and says, "Not that immigrants are to blame for it. Immigrants are to blame for the last 10 years of housing policy." So it's like, well, hold on, which one is it? You just told us we need to take the pressure off by reducing immigration, and then you say immigrants never caused it. That makes no sense. And I think it's part of this balancing act that they're trying to do. Like I said, with the foreign investment new rules that they're bringing in as well, they're trying to assure everyone that they're looking out for the working guy, having these policies to ease the squeeze, as Mark Latham used to say, on the cost of living. But at the same time, they want to still look non-racist and humanitarian,
Well, again, how many years ago would we have to like actually do a deep dive into their rhetoric to actually find the how deep do we have to dig to find the seed of contradiction, versus them quite literally now just spilling it out in the public, or spilling it out through their own direct rhetoric. It's like, what's that fucking phrase? The contradiction has heightened.
It has. It really has. And also, what you said about the Greens, the economic issue that they have made sort of their flagship issue for at least this term of government is definitely rent prices. And the Greens will say, we need to have rent control. Because they don't actually even say it's surprising, but they don't really advocate that much for like, the subdividing of houses and that kind of thing, because they do kind of look at it from an environmental point of view.
Yeah.
But what they always advocate is rent control. And yeah, these inner city trendies who, like I said, may well go through life never owning a house, but still wanting to live the inner city high life, they're going to be so fucking ignorant that they're going to think that their only salvation is rent control, because you can't blame it on housing policy or on migration. You just simply have to blame it on Mr. Rich Capitalist or whatever.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm just gonna have to like fucking let me open up the microwave. I'm gonna reheat a libertarian talking point. Yeah, like you want to make this a million times fucking worse in the short term. Yeah, fucking rent control it and make sure no one actually builds any more of these fucking units.
Yeah. And I mean that is where actually the libertarian argument is true. However, I would just say at the same time, if you had full libertarianism, you would have
bug boxes.
Yeah, well, I mean, you would have open borders. I mean that's one of the even if you were to get rid of the welfare state and all that kind of stuff that Milton Friedman would say you have to get rid of the welfare state before you can have open borders. But if you did get to that stage, oh holy shit! You just imagine the amount of people flooding in, and you could kiss Australia goodbye. We're currently
I remember saying like
long kiss goodbye.
I remember like hearing this fucking like anarcho-capitalist libertarian being like, actually it's immoral that like we don't have open borders to equalize the standard of living across the world. I'm just like, I want to fucking rip your eyeballs out, man.
Yeah. Okay. One other announcement was they did say they're going to be fast tracking visas for migrants moving to regional Australia. Okay. Perth and Adelaide.
Nowhere to run to, baby. Nowhere
Perth
to hide.
and Adelaide counts as regional Australia.
Yeah.
Right? Basically, any of the major cities in Queensland except for Brisbane count as regional areas. First thing to say about that. Second is, why is it that the one spot that the white man can run to is the country, but we want to invade there as well. I don't get excited about this. This is such a fucking conservative talking point where they say, no, there's nothing wrong about migration. You just need to keep the pressure off public infrastructure by putting more people in the regional areas instead. Really?
Oh, also, that's going to completely and utterly, well, it's going to fuck the regional areas for a lot of reasons, but like the idea of like fucking the countryside is that it doesn't need to be fucking higher density than it already is. That's the idea. There's only actually so much labor to be done out there, and it's non-elastic. So like, why are you doing this? Oh yeah, just to make their lives fucking miserable.
Right, and also people move to the country for the specific reason that it is not highly populated, that it's not densely populated. That's a lifestyle choice that they've made. So yeah, this is basically saying let's take that away from them. All right. So we can move off that. We're still on immigration, though.
If they do that, I'm going out with some fucking political material and a pitchfork.
Right. Okay, so look, we did get through that, so-called emergency legislation to establish a preventative detention regime in Australia. So just to quickly go over the technical aspect of that, the High Court, when it made its decision that we're all aware of, they gave their reasoning like only last week. I don't know if you saw that, but they gave the ruling and then they postponed the reasoning for like a week. I don't really know why. It was kind of silly. But what they said was that, well, the government doesn't have the right to be punitive. It can't deal out punishment. So doing something like, say, stripping someone of their dual citizenship, that is a punitive measure and government shouldn't be allowed to do it. That is something that is there for the police and for the courts to do. So that's basically what they said here as well. Keeping someone locked up indefinitely because they're stateless or whatever the reason might be, and the minister making that decision is a punitive decision, and therefore it's outside of his constitutional powers. So the High Court said that doesn't mean you couldn't keep some people in detention for other reasons. And that is, you simply have to have a court to make that decision. So that's what they found here now, is that each of these people will go to a hearing of the court. They would decide basically whether or not they should be deemed a public threat to people's safety, a threat of committing crime, etc. And if they're convinced to the extent necessary, then yeah, they can be locked up. So that's what they've got at the moment. It's obviously something that we should have had before. I do agree with Peter Dutton when he says that the government was caught off guard and making policy on the run here. Otherwise, why would they have spent the end of the year, rushing all this stuff through? So it's better than nothing, I guess. And one of the reasons actually why you can get locked up again is if you break your curfew. So when they impose these restrictions on, like when they impose the curfews and the ankle bracelets and that, they said that if you break the curfew, that's actually 1 year in jail. And there was a guy, actually. So, yeah, this was the sixth person that was released from that cohort of immigrants, which is, I'm hearing about 150 now, is the number I've heard floating around.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, so it just gets bigger all the time. I mean, we were told like 70 at the beginning. Now it's up to 150. So it was a 36-year-old guy from Eritrea who broke the curfew. So he could find himself in jail for a whole year for doing that. Naughty boy.
Unfortunately, it's not in jail in Eritrea.
I know. Yeah, so Mark Dreyfus really lost his cool at a press conference at the end of last week. So it was a journalist who asked him if he owed the Australian people an apology for the release of, that 150-odd cohort. And he started like shouting at her and saying,
"You apologize to Gentiles?"
He did. He actually apologized later on. But at the time he was saying, "I will not apologize for doing my job, discharging my duties as a public servant," and all of this. And it completely missed the point of the question. Because obviously when the court made its decision, you had to then comply with the High Court decision. But what she was basically saying was, shouldn't you have been prepared for this? Shouldn't you have had legislation at least drafted so that you could pass it in the case that the High Court decision was unfavourable to the government's position? And so, yeah, he did have to apologise for that later. You had a mixed reaction from other Labor front benchers when they were asked, do they agree? Would they amplify Mark Dreyfus's comments? And basically, I think Albo said to him, yeah, you've got to come out and apologise for this. You went a bit too far. So, yeah, a member of the tribe apologising to Gentiles. It's a pretty rare thing, but it will happen from time to time.
All it takes is 150 criminals to be released into your nation.
All right, so I'll just go through two more of the people. So there's 6 so far. Could have gone up since I've last checked this out, but 6 people of the 150 or so people released who have been arrested. Some of them, it was like within like a day of being arrested. So one of them, I'm pretty sure we profiled this guy at the time, Aliawa Yawari, who I think is from Indonesia, a 65-year-old guy. This was a sex offender who went after old women. Like, he would bash and sexually assault like old women. You can't get much worse than that. Now, he got arrested, but we're not being told for what. Well, you want to take a guess? I mean, having a look at the guy's rap sheet.
That is bashing and trying to rape an old woman?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, like I said, we don't actually have the detail, but yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, yeah, that's what it probably fucking was.
If I was a betting man...
Yes. Okay, so another guy. This is a guy called William Yeckrop. He's a 39-year-old from somewhere. He's from Africa. Why don't I have this in my prep? I just remember he was a black guy. Oh, wait, he's from Sudan, of course. So, and yes, he was caught up in the Sudan Civil War and was also said to have been trained as a child fighter. So this is a guy with a history of drink driving offences and violence. And he was just arrested the other day as well.
He's a fan of the booze cruise.
Yes. Says they picked him up at 9 in the morning, so he might have been off on a bender at that point. And man, he's just like one of those blacks, you look at him, well, I mean, most blacks, I look at him this way anyway, where it's just like, you are such a sign of the rot that is all around me. The fact that my country actually hosts a specimen like you. Like, what is this clown world that I live in?
There's some of them, you look at them, it's like, Jesus fucking Christ, you're not even black. You're purple.
This guy's definitely black. He's from Sudan. That's where you get like the black to the black. This guy's pretty damn black. Okay, so in terms of the effect of this precedent in the High Court over this, this gay Rohingya man, this child rapist who was only known by the legal code NZYQ. So the coalition is warning that it is now kind of cascading throughout the legal system. So they said this after a lower court used the ruling to release an Iranian asylum seeker who had been in detention for a decade. So this was the federal court last week on Thursday. And you want to know what this guy's name is? This fucking Iranian asylum seeker? I'm not joking.
Does it come with a side of chickpeas and hummus?
No, his name is Ned Kelly Emeralds.
What the fuck?
That's his name. And
what?
when you have a look at the story where this guy, where they write up on him, he's got a Ned Kelly t-shirt on. Now, I'm sorry, I didn't have time to kind of research this guy's backstory. Obviously, there has to be some explanation behind all of this. But yeah, this Iranian asylum seeker has been in detention for 10 years. His name is Ned Kelly Emeralds. And that was a decision of the federal court. So that means that, you haven't seen the last of him, in other words. So other people who may not have benefited from the high court ruling could benefit from a ruling of the lower courts as well. All right.
Okay, no, I've got some freaks and weirdos. Different stripes here. It's just making this country a more colorful place.
Okay. So look, the coalition did try to get through some other amendments of, the redrafted citizenship laws and that kind of thing. So with the citizenship laws, I think we covered a couple of weeks ago that there was another High Court ruling finding, again, that, governments couldn't take a punitive measure against against someone who had dual citizenship, strip it away from them and say, all right, you got to go to your other country now. They haven't really moved on that. Again, it just has to be up to the court to make that decision. So they're not going to actually legislate on it.
What's the fucking holdup? What's the issue? Because, we fucking did that to that bikie leader who went to Malta.
Oh, okay, that's a bit different. So that guy, I forget his name, but he was actually only an Australian permanent resident.
Oh, okay.
So right. You can do it. In that case, you can do it. But when it comes to citizenship, stripping someone of their citizenship is deemed to be punitive. So therefore, only a court has the right to do it. A politician can't. So, look, but specifically on this, though, why the government didn't do anything in regards to citizenship, even though they did with these asylum seekers, I think it's just because, they ran out of time. Peter Dutton was actually calling for Parliament to be extended, up until Christmas time, because there seemed to be so many of these loose ends that weren't tied up. And yeah, I think I agree. And this was one of them. The government basically didn't have time had too much of a heavy workload to actually sort this out. Because it is actually pretty amazing, like how many announcements and that we've gotten right at the end of the year, when they should have been prioritizing other areas.
Yeah.
Okay, final story on immigration was there is still a Pacific Island push for visa-free travel across the Pacific. Now, here's what that means. It means Pacific Island countries like Fiji, Tonga, etc., ones you've never heard of, Tuvalu.
Yeah, Tuvalu.
That was one I only recently heard of. That means all of those countries and Australia. Okay, when they talk about visa-free travel, that's exactly what they mean. And look at the last bloody climate change. Read Pacific Island cash splash. This was brought up, but Albo did knock it back. Nonetheless, they're going to keep calling for it, and they're probably going to keep getting concessions. As we know, they did announce a whole bunch of visas. How do you say that name of that country again?
Tuvalu.
Tuvalu.
Yeah, they're only famous for the .tv extension. Like literally, that's their one thing.
Oh,
their entire country is funded by the .tv extension.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
interesting. Okay, yeah. So I mean, we gave them a shitload of visas the other day. I forget how much it was, but it was a lot. It was probably fucking more than what their population is, considering it's in the tens of thousands.
Yeah,
that's it. Very, very small. All right. Let us move over to the Israel-Gaza conflict. So, again, many demonstrations and that have happened across the country. We will just kind of go through a couple of them. So one of them
to be exact, their population is about 12K.
No, that's very small.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was only a few hundred visas, actually, that we offered them. And that's still a fair percentage of their population.
For a population of 12K, yeah, it's still quite a bit.
Yes, it is. Okay, so, yeah, here in Perth, in North Fremantle, they BDS protesters, or whatever you want to call them, did target the shipping freighting company ZIM. We've talked about how they've been targeted in Port Botany over by Sydney. But yeah, they seem to be spreading this around the country now. So if you don't know, ZIM have been known to ship a lot of ammunition and other military goods to the state of Israel from Australia.
Yeah.
So, these guys do stuff like they go out on jet skis to try and interrupt it and that kind of thing.
You can see the Houthis, they use a small helicopter to drop some armed men onto a handful of them recently.
Yeah. Now, as far as I know, the ones over in Sydney have caused a bit of disruption. I don't think this one really did. And the reason why is because they were advertising it. So when I read about this, this was a day after I saw some stuff on Facebook, actually, saying everyone turn up at this time to this location to partake in the blockade of ZIM. So it's guys, police keep an eye on Facebook. That would be crazy not to. You have no idea how much intel police and intelligence get from social media. They get an incredible amount. So, of course, the cops were just there waiting for them when they turned up. So, yeah, I don't think anything really kind of came of that.
Also, you really, if you're going to fucking blockade Fremantle, you really have to go for gold because they've got their own internal logistics and storage network inside the actual, port facility. It's not like they're fucking, shipping out trucks to another storage place and etc. They can hold and fucking load goods for an extended period of time.
Okay. Again, I'm not going to pretend like I know about the logistics of Fremantle's port service. I've had a lot of friends who worked in that stuff over the years, but yeah, I've never been a wharfie or anything. I do like those videos. Well, I mean, they're sad in a way, but in China, they have fully automated ports, all these robot arms and that basically working all the containers. It's an amazing sight. It's sad as well because think of the amount of jobs that are lost from all of that. Okay, so yeah, you had another protest in Queensland where you had the Greens MPs were joining them outside of Parliament House. And yeah, this is again sort of causing the likes of, why am I forgetting his name? Julian Leeser, to say that the new face of anti-Semitism is in the Greens party. And they don't
Oh
seem to
God,
be relenting from that.
honestly, I wish they were fucking right. I mean, God, the one we had a look at, and the kind of talking points that are making them like fucking spew out. It's kind of sad to see that they've been this quickly misdirected, but yeah, well, I guess the Greens have just turned them fucking gay.
Yeah. How many? I spotted 2 trannies at that one. I don't
We're
know
being
what you're.
fucking followed around by some little skinny Asian kid from the Marx conference for a little bit. Did you notice that?
No, I didn't.
No, that's the one I kept fucking staring at because he was just like, we would go somewhere and then like he'll wander over like about like 30 seconds later. I'm just like, what the fuck are you doing?
Nah, I did notice that girl you pointed out with the clipboard, though. It
Yeah.
looked like she was from Socialist Alternative or something. She did look like she had her eye on us, like this look that said these guys don't belong here.
Oh yeah.
There's
No.
something different about them.
Dude, we got picked fucking real quick. We got picked real quick. Like a bunch of white dudes. Some of us unfortunately in matching t-shirts. Yeah, we got picked fast.
Okay. All right. So there is going to be an envoy, an Australian envoy to Israel, to bolster ties and show solidarity to the state of Israel from Australia, with love from Australia. Now, this was actually something. This was like a shit test, actually, that the coalition did to the government. So this was announced by Simon Birmingham because he is Penny Wong's opposition counterpart. He's the opposition foreign affairs spokesman. And he announced that he was going to be leading an envoy to Israel to show Australian support. And then he said, why don't you do the same thing? Okay, well, that's basically what was announced the next day. Labor gave in, and they said, all right, we'll send Penny Wong over there and, a few other people for good measure, just to show that we're still there. So look, I know that, like Mike Enoch has been saying on TRS that, like the increase of brown people in Western countries isn't really doing much in terms of stalling support for Israel. So, I mean, he gives examples of, you've got both the leaders in Britain and in Scotland are both fucking Pajeeps at the moment, yet they're still stridently Zionist. That's definitely true. And I'd still say that the lobby groups and who the leadership listen to the most in Australia are also Zionists. However, the electorate, the actual voters, are not. And when you look at, like, particularly in Western Sydney, which is, a Labor Party stronghold, of course, except where they lost Christina Keneally to Daly, they're very much voting on ethnic lines. And absolutely fair to say that Muslims in Australia, especially Arabs, they vote for the Labor Party, all right? And there's actually a long tradition of that. When the Lebanese started to flood in here in the 80s, they became very, very much involved in the Labor Party. And what a surprise. That was also when all this rampant corruption started going through the Labor Party as well. With Eddie Obeid and Joe Tripodi and Moses Obeid, Carl Batar, etc. So, what was I saying? Oh, yeah. So my point is that, I still think the Jews are very nervous about their grip on power at the moment. And if they weren't, we wouldn't have the fast-tracked ECAJ report on anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have Devere Abramovich calling for everything to be banned,
Yeah,
just
Devere
like
Abramovich is fucking flailing his arms in the air recently. Holy shit.
It's hard to believe, but even more so than he usually does. He's actually just kind of left, right, and center calling for for bans, boycotts, jail this person, all of this. He's going off his head right
Bayless
now.
flap his pee-pee.
Yeah. So even while the leadership might be on board and, they're doing stupid fucking stunts like this envoy to Israel, I still think that Jews are getting nervous because of the amount of Muslim voters and the pressure that they are exerting from a grassroots level. Because remember, like whites, they're not afraid to organize collectively.
Well, yeah, because they haven't had their fucking dicks slapped hard enough yet. But no, I'll completely agree with that point. One of the things I've noticed is that left-leaning Jews in this country have kind of taken the gas pedal off of the multiculturalism talking points. Now, obviously, Goyish progressive have not. But the thing is, the left-leaning Jews are basically exclaiming how they've been betrayed by multiculturalism and they're being betrayed by their fellow progressives. And the answer to that is no, they're just operating under the programming that you've given them. Unfortunately, you just didn't see this fucking Stack Overflow.
Yeah, it's a Jewish column. It absolutely is. And you can definitely see it sort of coming back to bite them in Europe as well. France is a good example. When they talk about French anti-Semitism, what they're really talking about is Muslim, Arab and African anti-Semitism. I mean, look, it is coming back in the white European population as well, but not in a violent way, okay? If you want to call me an anti-Semite, fine. I'll wear that. But I don't go around bashing Jews, and nor would I have given the chance, okay? I'm one of the most peaceful people you'll ever meet, honestly. And my
not
prejudices...
when it comes to your taste in music.
Well, yeah, I'll definitely bash you for that. But... yeah, I mean, I never have any desire to bring this to,
No.
I wouldn't round up a bunch of guys to bash up a Jew or something. Just wouldn't
that was one of the back and forths I saw between the kind of the Jews wanting to talk about Nazi anti-Semitism in the country and them getting shouted at by other Jews being like, are you fucking serious? Why the fuck are you talking about how they had a meeting that you didn't like and etc. when there's actually Jews getting bashed by Arabs and Africans in this country? Why why are you fucking speculating on presumed future violence from a group that you don't really have any evidence that they're interested in that kind of thing, while there is actual physical violence going on? That's been one of the interesting things I've been seeing.
Yeah, I think also they're just, I mean, even if white people are not the ones committing the violence, and they know damn well that we're not, they also know that if we were to actually organize collectively and politically, well, that ultimately is the biggest threat to their power.
There could be some very uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah, and I mean, look, that is ultimately how the Holocaust was invented as well, was that they were never... screaming about them being needlessly murdered or anything. It was because of the fact that they were removed from positions of power all around Europe, starting from the early 30s. That's what it was. They were livid about that. And so they have to come up with this narrative about mass slaughter, and they're doing a similar thing right now. Do you know that Steven Spielberg is currently working on a documentary about October 7, the Hamas attack?
Yeah, I actually went through that link you sent. Yeah, no, we're seeing the Holocaust sausage being made all together, or in real time.
Yeah, we're seeing it. We are seeing it being made in real time. And this is just I hope that Kevin McDonald is writing a book or at least some essays about this right now. He'd be the perfect person to analyze this. But
we need a good fucking scholar to in before this shit.
Yeah, because we need someone to document the exaggerations and sometimes just outright lies and distortions of what happened on October 7, and just to show how they actually create this myth in the first place, repeat the lie often enough, we've all heard that line before, so that people eventually believe it. They're doing that right now.
I mean,
And
look, they're
so,
already trying to memory hole the embarrassment that was them getting caught out with getting caught using AI images. They're already like fucking repeating the lie that those images were real and that it was actually the anti-Semites who made an AI image.
yeah, right, right. Yeah, and I mean, certainly the pictures of incinerated babies and that were fake.
Yeah, the one that turned to be a puppy in a blanket, and they fucking used that as a template to fucking make that image.
Yeah.
Oh God.
All right, now here's just like I'm only going to do one story here. This was like a sob piece that was done by The Australian. These are just about daily in terms of sob pieces about anti Semitism that are being released in The Australian, or take your pick over at Sky News as well. They've got plenty of them. So I'm just going to read one example. And this is one of two senior Liberal MPs who were contacted by the UN Women Australia chairperson, Georgina Williams. So the MPs in question are opposition education spokeswoman and Victorian Senator Sarah Henderson, and Victorian Liberal MP Georgie Crozier. Now, they made a complaint that the UN Women Australia body of the UN was not condemning the violence and the rape inflicted by Hamas on October 7. And apparently, the chairperson, Georgina Williams, called them and had a heated discussion and apparently berated them
Oh
for
wow.
simply making this criticism.
I wish I could call up a UN body and just berate them.
Yeah, but look, one of the reasons why this story kind of caught my eye was not that's pathetic. I mean, okay, so wow, someone called you and gave you an angry phone call because they didn't like what you said. So what? You could just say that your criticism amounted to abuse as well. You know, it kind of works both ways. But what I thought was funny about this was when I looked at the what these two Liberal MPs did, Georgie Crozier and Sarah Henderson, was they also went to one of these bloody rallies in favor of Israel, like the ones where they say release the hostages and that kind of thing. And they had the following slogans, like on their T-shirts or signs, which is "Believe Israeli women," "We believe them," and "No excuse." You know what they're talking about there? They're talking about the rapes. Where have we heard this shit before? We believe them. Believe Israeli women. You know.
Oh, that's some weird talking points that I don't think belongs in that political sphere.
Now, conservatives, or at least we're told, are supposed to be against the whole "we believe survivors" mantra because it rejects the presumption of innocence. You know, like saying, "Hey, who needs due process when you could just believe them just because they said so?" Well, if that's the case, it's this classic example of conservative hypocrisy where all identity politics is bad except for Israel.
Well, again, that was the main gripe that you got during that first little stint of information warfare that happened on Twitter was basically Jews being asked for proof, and then them saying like the proof is I'm fucking telling you. That's the proof.
Right. So it's like, okay, we should have a presumption of innocence for everyone, except for Israeli women. We should just believe them outright.
Yeah. I'm surprised
All
they
right.
went with that one, considering how fucking beaten to the ground that talking point was.
Yeah. All right, so we'll move on to climate and energy. So COP28 is on. I think it's still on. It might have just finished up. Anyway, this is the one in Dubai, that really hot Arab country. City, I should say. UAE is the country. And what was it that they were trying to formulate there? Sort of agreements and programs. Well, they want a tripling of renewable energy. They want a doubling of energy efficiency, meaning, you know, getting more out of the existing fossil fuels that we use. And here's our all-time favorite one. The Loss and Damage Fund. The Loss and Damage Fund is there for those Pacific islands that we just keep throwing money on.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, what it's actually really about is their strategic pawns against China in the Pacific.
Yeah.
And we pay them lots of money to host military bases there. And we just tell the rest of the world, oh no, this is just a climate fund.
We're,
That's what it
we're
is.
bribing a whole bunch of fucking Samoans with KFC so they don't go over to China.
Yeah, and I mean, they love it as well. These Pacific Island nations, why wouldn't they like it? They just keep, like, people are fighting over who wants to give them the most amount of gibs. They must
Yeah.
be loving this. But yeah,
It'll be
that was
so
the
fucking
other.
funny if like actual worldwide conflict breaks out again and they're not even part of the equation and you're just left thinking, I was like, why the fuck did I give you fuckers so much money?
Yep, yep. So look, Chris Bowen was there, or is still there. I'm sorry, I don't know if it's still going right now. But look, he made some commitments. He also made some ridiculous rhetorical points. I'll go through a couple of them. So he has made Australia join 100 other countries in committing to a tripling of renewable energy capacity by 2030. So, oh man. Uh, Another point that he made, this was one of the more rhetorical points, I guess, because there's no action plan behind it, was that not only do we need to aim for net zero from fossil fuel use, so in other words, completely neutralize emissions from fossil fuels, he actually said we just need to end fossil fuel use altogether, completely. Now, this used to be a talking point you'd only hear from the Greens. So I think we can basically officially say that the Overton window in terms of climate and energy has been moved again to the left, because now we've got the Labor Party in a position where they never would have said something like this even 5 years ago. You know, the complete and utter end of burning any type of fossil fuel whatsoever. But that's what Chris Bowen has done.
Well, the money is now completely in the right place. They don't need to mix their rhetoric anymore and thinking that they weren't completely on board back in the day and weren't just, placating a population. Well,
Right.
we anyone who said that is now completely vindicated. Also, just a note, you're not going to get more efficiency out of like fucking, fossil fuels just because like it's one I can't remember the exact phrase used for it, but when you put in as much effort just to get, like you put in effort X and you get like result increase Y, and then you put in effort X and you get like diminishing returns. There we go.
Yeah.
These machines are so old and they've been made so incredibly efficient for what they are that we're quite literally in your own car, in your own like the small combustion engine inside your own car, you're reaching the thermodynamic limits of how efficient it can be.
Okay. So they're flogging a dead horse then. It's
Yeah, no.
just impossible.
There's like fossil fuels are as efficient as they can be. Anything that works on a thermodynamic cycle can only really be 33% efficient of its total energy.
Right.
But the thing is, like, fossil fuels are just so fucking energy dense it doesn't really matter.
Okay. So, well, look, much to Chris Bowen's lament, unfortunately for him, we have a report from the Global Carbon Project. And they're saying that emissions from fossil fuels have actually increased in the past year, right? So they said even though we are spending more money than ever on green energy investment, emissions continue to climb. And it's not a surprise. I mean, China continues to...
Shithole countries.
That's it, particularly China. They're not fully industrialized yet. They're almost there. But, they open an incredible amount of coal fire stations. And not just that. Think of the amount of people immigrating from third world countries to first world countries. That's one of the leading causes of CO2 emissions.
Thank you, Sierra Club, for dropping that entire talking point for money.
Yeah, and I mean, you think about it, environmentalists, if they're really concerned about the environment, I mean, if they want to tell people that they shouldn't have kids because of the increase of their carbon footprint, okay, shouldn't you also be saying that we shouldn't allow any more immigrants in ever? Because they're one of the leading causes.
Who the fuck said this? It's like, if you really wanted to fight global warming, you'd be thermonuclear striking power plants in India.
What the hell?
I can't remember which commentator said that, but I just found it so fucking hilarious. I was like, all right, that's a bit over the top, but I get where you're coming from.
Okay. Yeah, so look, Labor and union figures in Australia are saying that we need to lift the ban on nuclear energy. Yeah. Why don't you actually listen to them? You know, they did listen to them when it came to getting rid of Annastacia Palaszczuk, that we'll cover soon. Why not to listen to them here? Now, the main reason that they're asking for this is not because they have any particular interest in climate change. Certainly, none of the guys you know, when I've done blue collar jobs before, I certainly never noticed this as some like pressing issue for people. They're doing this because they know that green energy is a threat to their jobs. And if you were to actually switch over to nuclear instead, you could save a lot of those blue collar jobs, albeit, they would be replacing them. Nonetheless,
Yeah.
at least there would be another pathway for them to move towards, because the only pathway they're leading to at the moment is a dole queue. All right, they
Yeah.
could use a lot of those same skills in
Again,
another industry.
the clock is ticking on basically the entire town of Collie becoming unemployed. At least, like, the fucking, like, turbine techs and, furnace techs. The furnace techs could probably be retrained to a degree to actually just do the lever pulling in a nuclear power plant. But the turbine techs wouldn't even have to requalify. It's the same fucking thing.
Yeah, and by the way, Collie actually really only has one coal mine going at the moment, and it's propped up by the state government because.
Yep.
Well, not a surprise, they announced that everything, mining and coal fire stations in Collie, were going to be completely closed by 2030. Oh, then all the investment leaves. I wonder why. So now the government is propping up the only mine they've got left there. Okay. What else?
It would be funny if it wasn't so fucking sad.
Oh, God. Real quick here. God, this is now the third time I've mentioned this, but Australia has announced that they're going to provide $100 million to establish a Pacific resilience facility, right? Yeah, you know what that is? Again, it's more bribe money for the Pacific Islands. So there you go. There's another $100 million that they're pledging to that.
Please do not side with China. Please.
Yes.
Again, I've said this before. Like, I think if the government was actually just completely and utterly fucking honest about why this was the case and etc., I think people would be more accepting of it, like being like, "Hey, look, we're giving these fucking like islanders shit tons of money because we don't want them like being military bases for like a further attack on this country. It's like a national security thing, rather than just bullshitting about that it's about green energy or some shit like that."
They should, yeah. And I mean, when those island nations call on Australia to reduce its emissions, they don't really care about our emissions. They don't. They're just pretending to care about climate change so as to add some moral justification for the gibs that we dump on them. That's all it is. Okay. So another new announcement from the Commonwealth here. So this refers to, and you might have to enlighten me as to exactly what this means, Nolsey, but unconventional gas production. So that includes the Northern Territory's Beetaloo Basin. That is going to require new approvals from the Commonwealth. So in other words, more red tape before you can actually look for what is referred to as unconventional gas production. I'm not really sure what they mean by that.
I was talking about the green and blue gas facilities that FMG wanted to create. It's more or less that. So, and also like it's kind of like picking at like relatively low yield sources as well for gas. It's basically like anything outside of like finding a big natural gas well that is like the standard fucking mine that you'd get like standard fucking well that you'd get natural gas from. It's anything from the production of natural gas from either the breaking down of like other volatile gas compounds to finding like relatively low yield wells and using a unique methodology to actually extract natural gas from it.
Right. Okay.
I had to look that up just to make sure I wasn't fucking like lying with an agenda. But yeah, no, I did remember that correctly.
All right. I'm glad you were able to explain that, because I wouldn't be able to. But anyway, why have we got this? This is what they're referring to as a water trigger. Now, it's called a water trigger because this came off the back of the deal that Labor made with the Greens for the Murray-Darling Basin. So this made a lot of South Australian farmers in particular very angry about the buyback scheme that they've got going on. But the Greens ended up backing it, and they wanted something in return here. So that's what they've got, is this new approval process that they have to go through. As to how lenient the Commonwealth is going to be in approving those applications, I don't know. I would suspect they would actually have to be kind of more approving than what the Greens might hope. Because the Greens just don't want it all together.
So it looks like the one that they're actually referring to, the means of unconventional gas production, is shale gas. Shale gas is not necessarily the best source. I think they're probably actually moving on to that because of how quickly the FMG project got shit canned. But this is I'm just reading this as a PDF from the Australian Council of Learned Academics. And unfortunately, that actually like just triggers my autism because I remember another council of learned somethings. But yeah, no, it's not exactly the highest yield kind of gas, and it's a little bit more dangerous. So I'm not sure that they're going to approve this as easily. But the problem is they've also, like, just legislatively, they've actually targeted gas production as well. I did speak earlier about how we nearly lost the contract with the Ragnarok gas extraction and storage ship, which is the biggest in the world, because we were basically shit canning and like overtaxing the wells that it was extracting gas from. So this is probably just a workaround for that legislation. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just reading the executive summary. That's pretty much it. So they're going to spend $500 million over exploration for the next 1 to 2 years. Given the momentum of the industry in Australia is increasing, a matter of urgency has come to fully assess the nation's shale gas resources. So yeah, we're going into a prospecting phase for less than ideal gas because we're making our standard gas wells not economically viable.
Right. Okay. We'll get off climate and energy and move on to the issue of free speech. So actually, just quick story to get us started on this. I just found this funny how we were giving out awards for whistleblowers. Oh no, wait. Oh no, sorry. These are the Nobel Prizes. I don't know if they've done the Peace Award yet, but they give out a whole heap of them. But there was a guy here who's kind of like advertised as an Australian, but he's actually from Papua New Guinea. So he's a lawyer. But he lives in Australia. And was
he from the colonies?
Yeah, well, it is a former colony of ours, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's a lawyer, and he blew the whistle on Papua New Guinea's corruption. Okay, so he had to flee the country. He came to Australia essentially as a refugee because they were going to fucking kill him and eat him, I'd say, over there. He blew the whistle, and all of a sudden we're like, oh, look at this. What a surprise. Papua New Guinea is actually corrupt to the core. We didn't really need anyone to tell us that. But simply because he was able to give some specifics in terms of how it was working, this is enough to actually get yourself a Nobel Peace Prize.
Damn.
Yeah. Yeah. When you look at the countries that rate highest in the world for corruption, they actually tend to be from the Pacific Islands and also from like brown people Asia. And by that I mean like Pakistan, Bangladesh, places like that.
West Asia, yeah.
Yeah. I would say that, like, in Africa too, but not as much. And the reason why I think is just because, like, blacks aren't smart enough to, like, create a workable system of corruption. Because they often say, like, in a country like Bangladesh, there isn't corruption in the system. Corruption is the system. It's just the way
In
it
Africa,
works.
there's just no system.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So, I mean, like in Somalia, they just basically don't even have a government because they're not able to establish something. And
Corruption in Somalia isn't like some bureaucrat, like, just basically writing some dumb invoices and pocketing the money. In Somalia, it's a dude showing up with an AK, pointing at you and saying, "Give me the fucking money."
right, which hardly makes Somalia an ANCAP paradise.
No.
So yeah, I would say one of the reasons why they do have this functional system of corruption, could we maybe call it that, in Papua New Guinea, is again because of all the fucking money that we pile on them, but also they're recipients of this all of this climate fund shit as well.
Well, even before the climate change shit, I still remember getting absolutely pissed out of my mind, fucking because I was in.
You mean angry, right?
Yes.
Being a seppo again.
No, yeah, just immense, like seethingly angry. Like you could boil something on my forehead, angry. Because I'll remember seeing these videos of Papua New Guineans like shaking around like a jar full of like their worthless like aluminium pennies, saying like, "Oh, this is Australia's money," and I'm just thinking to myself, I was like, literally everything, every fucking like piece of infrastructure around you was bought and paid for by us. Like, shut the fuck up.
Their entire internet system is built by Australia.
Yes.
Well, their broadband system anyway. That is entirely built by us.
Basically, if you go over there and it's not open sewerage, like it's actually a controlled sewerage system, you paid for it if you're an Australian citizen.
Oh yeah. That, not that we're saying go over there for a holiday to check it out. Don't go there.
Don't.
There have been
to get methanol poisoning.
Yeah. And we're still, I'm not sure if I have something on this later, but I know that we're pouring even more money into PNG to quell their tribal unrest. And this is where you have, yes, like old tribal clans clashing with each other and killing and eating each other. Yes, that really does happen to this day in Papua New Guinea.
If you find if you're down at the RSL and you see a veteran that's got a few too many grey hairs, you can probably ask them about what they saw if they're willing to talk to you about it. Because a lot of them aren't, because a lot of it was really fucked up.
Right. So look, to have a more substantive story on free speech, we've got a little bit of information on the proposed disinformation laws, so-called. And that is that the minister in question, the communications minister, which right now is Michelle Rowland, would have the power to direct the media watchdog to investigate instances of online misinformation. So the media watchdog is ACMA. It already exists, but it would be given further powers to investigate instances of online misinformation. So, like some dodgy Facebook post or something like that. Might I remind people that the only example Albo has actually used in Parliament was on connecting the Indigenous voice to Parliament with Australian Jews. That, he said. And he used that as an example because he's like, oh, you in the Liberal Party, you wouldn't oppose that, would you? So great. It looks like we've got bipartisan support against silencing us online. And I mean, the Racer and the XYZ, we were there in pushing that idea of reminding people that, yes, there absolutely was an echoey element behind the Indigenous voice. Don't know if we shared the graphic in question, but we talked a lot about Mark Lever, etc., and his role in it. The draft bill is said to be released soon. So the communications minister wrote to Albanese in June to approve the release of the draft bill. And it is still kind of sparking controversy from various groups that, it's going to stifle free speech.
Likely will.
Look, it will. But I'd say this. Those people who are kind of voicing their concern about it, like the Australian Christian Lobby or something like that, I would say that they would be left largely untouched by this. The people who are going to be the most targeted by this, make no mistake, are us. It's white nationalists or people on the dissident right. Because, they like to cast a wide net in Australia and kind of throw us in the same basket as the Proud Boys and even some churches. So, yeah, it'll be those more so-called radical and fringe elements that they go after. And, that is absolute overreach to tell a government regulatory agency to investigate us and then, recommend to have charges laid. All right.
We live in irregular times.
Okay, so on the economy and cost of living, we've got another sign that we're headed for even more dire economic times. And that is that apparently a lot of local craft breweries are facing foreclosure. So in the past 5 years or so, I guess craft beer has really taken off in Australia. I remember it was taking off before COVID, so I think it's fair to say it's been about 5 years or so. But despite that popularity, a lot of them have very, very thin profit margins. So they've been dealing with things like higher taxes, rising production costs, just general inflation. And also this is what the ABC referred to as changes to consumer spending. Yeah. In other words, people are stripping back spending on luxury goods or recreational goods so that they can use it for essential goods,
Yeah.
No
one's buying your triple hops fucking queer label beer. If they're buying beer, they're going and getting fucking Swan Draft or
that's what I was going to say.
God, I forbid, Emu Export.
Still, they're scaling down from the bubblegum sour to a Tui's or something like that.
Yeah,
that's definitely what it is. What's funny is a lot of these craft breweries, they actually brag about how they're dealing with climate change by providing things other than carbon dioxide or recycling their use of carbon in
Jesus Christ.
to carbonate. Because I remember we covered that a year ago or so. But their expansion is slowing. A lot of them didn't get through COVID and the lockdowns either. Some of the smaller local breweries, unfortunately, just shut down. That's definitely a sign of bad times if people are saying, okay, this good that I use or this service to just kind of treat myself every now and then, I can't even do that anymore. Well, that's a sign that people are hurting.
Yeah. Alcoholics most affected.
Right. And just quickly in South Australia, their water corporation is set to increase bills by 3.5%. So at least that's not as big as some of the other jumps that we've seen. So that'll start in the new financial year. And that might mean an extra $71 per year. Don't know how I stumbled across that story, but I'm assuming that, pretty much every other state and territory can expect a similar rise. So, even simple things like water are becoming more expensive now. Okay. On to industrial relations. So I think actually I might have covered some of this with Kyber when we did the catch-up episode. It sort of went into the territory of what I was supposed to cover this week. But we did manage to get some of Labor's industrial relations reform through the Parliament. So they didn't go for the more contentious stuff. The more contentious stuff that the business community is absolutely opposed to is the stuff regarding gig workers and casual workers. Because basically, Labor kind of wants gig workers to be treated like casual workers, and in turn, they want casual workers to be treated like part-time or full-time workers so that they have statutory rights. That stuff remains, so they have not passed anything on that yet. So this was just a deal done with, the crossbench, which basically just means David Pocock and Jackie Lambie. The Greens basically already support all this stuff anyway. So they're going with the two maverick senators. Okay, so when you look at what they want to do here, it's same job, same pay stuff. So this is the pattern bargaining or, multi-employer bargaining. The business community, was it 10 business groups, actually, in a joint statement accused the government of shattering business confidence and investment at a time of economic uncertainty, and said the radical labour hire changes and vast union powers would result in job losses and higher costs for consumers. So yeah, a lot of that stuff still has been brought through, even if they haven't quite dealt with the casual workers and the gig workers as of yet.
Yeah.
So, okay, so what do some of these changes mean? Let me bring up. All right, so pay and condition changes. So labour hire loopholes will be closed. I'm just quickly reading this from the ABC here. I did read this before, I've just kind of forgotten some of it. It'll ensure that employees will not miss out on their redundancy payments, regardless of the size of the business. That to me sounds like you're talking about government-backed guarantees there. If a company goes bust and they don't have the money to pay redundancy, well, who's going to pay for it? I think they're basically saying the government will. Okay, so under supports for workers. Now, this, when they say supports for workers, they're talking about like services, benefits, like counselling. So first responders, so that means paramedics, that kind of thing, they will be able to gain workers' compensation for PTSD, for example, starting on the 1st of January.
All right.
Yeah, so, this includes members of the Border Force, the police, ambulance officers, paramedics, and other emergency services workers. That seems fair enough to me.
Firefighters are also included on that list.
Yes,
if they're
they
not,
are.
yeah, okay,
Yep,
good. I was going to say it's like if you want to meet like a first responding group that has like the most PTSD, it's definitely fucking firefighters.
Yes, yeah. No, I just missed that for whatever reason, and yeah, definitely, I would agree. Okay, other supports for people experiencing family and domestic violence, making wage theft a crime. Okay, definitely, that should be a crime. I mean, theft is theft, isn't it? So this is, usually in the form of cash back. They pay them a certain amount, and then, their wage slip has a certain amount, and then they give like half their money back. That is now not only going to be, illegal for them to do, but it'll be a one sanctioned where you'll be fined or even jailed for doing it. So fair enough. And I mean, we've already got industrial manslaughter laws, so that's going to become a criminal offence under Commonwealth law now. That is when, like if someone dies on a building site, for example, and the company was found not to have taken the appropriate safety precautions, then that's a crime. You have committed an act of industrial manslaughter. Again, hard to disagree with that. And then like I said, the gig worker stuff, minimum standards for truck drivers, that kind of thing, all of that remains in limbo. And the crossbench, Jackie Lambie and David Pocock are saying they'd need more time to analyse it. And no doubt they will be heavily, heavily lobbied by unions and business associations between now and then. So, yeah, watch this space on that. Okay, quick story from the public service. This was just an interesting report that was put out saying that roughly 60% of people who work in the public service have work from home arrangements. I have to stress
Yeah,
that does not mean that 60% of the public service all work at home entirely. In
yeah,
fact,
it's like a handful of days, and when they actually have to do like physical paperwork or sign over stuff, they're in the office.
yeah,
I know a
my
lot of public
understanding
workers
is
who are battling for each and every single fucking day they can work from home.
some people are, yeah, but I think the average amount is 2 days a week.
Yep,
That's the
that
average
sounds about
amount
right.
that they do. Um, but anyway, so you had this came from the Public Service Commissioner. Said that active consideration is being given by finance to possible savings that could be made as a result of more than 72,000 public servants working from home, saying that this is uncharted territory. Well, I hope that doesn't include what Jeff Kennett suggested, which was just wage cuts. Because he's like, oh, look, they've got the luxury of working from home and they don't pay for commute time anymore. Therefore, we can pay them less. I think what this guy was more getting at was like, well, you can cut back on resources that you have in the office. Maybe we don't need so much furniture, desks, and laptops, monitors, that kind of thing, because we've got X amount of people working at home. So, I guess so.
Yeah, I mean, maybe shared stations, but then again, like, dude, asking a public service worker to cut down on like anything that is like a comfort good or like a asking them to apply any level of logistics or sharing to utilities or computers or etc. It's gonna be like fucking drawing blood from a stone.
Yeah. No offense to any bureaucrats who may be listening.
I mean, all of it, all of the offense.
All of them. You're sounding a bit robot, Nolsey, by the way.
Oh wait, is that better?
That's better, yeah.
Oop,
That is better.
I think. All right, okay, good. I think I just touched a wire.
Okay, let's move on to defence. So, Australia will join the US and UK to test a new way of tracking Chinese submarines using artificial intelligence. So this comes, like a couple of weeks after we had our naval divers injured by the giant sonar pulse that came from
Yeah,
a Chinese warship. So basically, we're still spitting chips over that, and we've got to ramp up our use of AI to get this under control. Not much
I
to
mean,
say about that, really.
I guess
So
like predictive patterns and etc. Like, hey, they tend to take this route, and they're going on a route that like looks like they're going to take this route, and you can plug in more information saying like, oh, there's been a hot spot over here, so maybe they'll adjust their route or some shit like that. I could see it working. It wouldn't give you like a definite picture though.
well,
At the end,
that's one of the reasons why they say Israel was caught off guard on October 7, because they were using AI technology to monitor the movements of Hamas. And basically, it was like the AI was saying, here is like regular movement and here is irregular movement. And so, what Hamas did to actually convince AI of what was just regular movement was they engaged in military training, right? They did it for such a length of time that the AI actually said, oh, this is normal. What they're doing is normal. And then, of course, that creates a false sense of security within the armed forces, and you're able to launch a surprise attack before the AI can warn you. Yeah, yeah.
gaslighting artificial intelligence with normalcy bias.
Yes, I guess you could say that. um, so,
Jesus.
yeah, I mean, you can fool AI. You definitely can. It
Yeah.
looks like Hamas did that. Okay, so
Good work.
um, apparently we pissed up $40 million of taxpayer money on two satellites that we don't know what to do with. So these are Airbus Arrow satellites that are assembled in Florida and are coming here next year. Apparently, this was something green lighted by the Australian government, and apparently, once they actually get here, we don't even know what we're doing with them because what is it? We've got like a very small space industry we've run it out of Adelaide, don't we? If memory serves correctly. Um,
Yeah, we do.
and
Um,
and they don't know what they're
uh,
going to do with them.
this seems like a massive oversight.
Yes.
How did we get here?
Yeah, well, look, and then the other one that we've got, well, this is not Albo's fault. So this actually dates back to the Turnbull government when Christopher Pyne was defence minister. So this is to do with warships that we're getting from Britain for $45 billion. We don't even know if that program is going ahead now because apparently we were supposed to be manufacturing some of them. And as we know, our manufacturing industry is just completely dead in Australia. So
We ain't ever gonna make it.
no.
And by that I mean the material.
Oh, okay. Now, just one kind of funny story to end defense on. So we've got a report from the United States Studies Center. Could you get a more generic, boring sounding name than that? Anyway, this report was talking about the challenges that we face the most in the AUKUS agreement and what we need to do about it. So it says here that women and skilled migrants will be the key to building and sustaining the nation's nuclear submarine capability. All right. So, of course, Nolsey and I have talked a lot about how we basically can't manufacture these submarines down here. Further to that, it looks like America won't even give us any because they're facing a declining military as well. And obviously declining manufacturing capability. But don't worry, the United States Studies Center is saying so long as we hire more women and bring in more foreign labor, we still should be able to make it. Oh my God.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Who commissions these fucking reports? Okay. Aboriginal news. Jackie Lambie thinks she's Aboriginal. I'm not joking. So we may know Jackie Lambie is a Tasmanian senator. And 30,000 people roughly in Tasmania identify as Aboriginal. None of them identify as full blood because, well, full bloods are dead. And the last full blood had his head taken off and donated to science, is what it honestly looks like. So anyway, she has threatened defamation against Michael Manziel. So this is, again, he's some like quadroon. He's like got a very small amount of Aboriginal blood in him. Active Aboriginal activist. And he's been calling on Jackie Lambie to come forward with proof. No, that proof does not mean... Who have we got here, Nolsey? Did you invite someone to the stream?
No, I did not.
Moonman.
Oh.
Who was trying... Are you sure you didn't give the link to someone else?
No, oh, fucking Jesus Christ, you found the fucking link. That's why.
Who is it?
Never mind. It's a fucking NJP dude. I was just saying, like, hey, look, I'm going for another 1.5 hours on this thing. Like, that's why I can't do something else.
Okay.
Oh, and it must have included the fucking link, you bastard.
Okay, well, just, politely decline his presence here. I'm sure you'd have great stuff to talk about, but I don't know who he is or or anything. It's a bit hard to just insert him halfway through the show.
All right, no, it's all good.
Okay. Sorry about that, listeners. Someone just kind of came into the green room there unexpectedly. I was like, what the hell? Who's this? Now, what was I talking about? Oh, yeah. So he's not saying to Jackie Lambie, come forward with DNA evidence. He said publicly lay out your bona fides. And that would include things like show us how you're connected to a particular tribe, or show us a tribe that would claim you as one of their own, that kind of thing. Because remember, you can't claim on DNA because that would mean to acknowledge race, wouldn't it? put people in categories. What a fucking joke. So yeah, Jackie Lambie is saying, look, I might sue you over this. Okay.
Again, liberalism not even not able to identify the material characteristics of race. There we go. How many times have we fucking covered that shit?
All right, look, that was about the only interesting story on Aborigines, so we'll move on to the closely related topic of crime. Now, police here in WA are pushing for the further restriction of alcohol in the northwest, our Kimberley region. Who lives up there, I wonder, in that vast...
White Anglo-Celtic Australian people. Yeah. Definitely not the long-lost cousins of Dravidian Indians.
So if you look in this this colony here, the colony of Carnarvon, they've adopted a model of alcohol restrictions that look a lot like what they've got in the Northern Territory. They've got a banned drinker registry. They've also got restrictions on heavy restrictions on what time bottle shops can open, being banned from public venues, stuff like that. Cops are basically saying, okay, this model has worked, and they have shown data that has shown that violence and other alcohol-related crime has dropped significantly in Carnarvon since actually putting those measures in place. And they're saying, okay, can we please do that for the whole northwest of Australia?
Yeah. I can see why. Like, dude, if you're a fucking beat cop up there, like, for starters, like, welcome to hell because you're living in it. But also, like, imagine just being called out, like, literally every single day to deal with some fucking Aboriginal who's drunk off his gourd, can't even fucking string two sentences together and doesn't even realize he's on the planet Earth.
Yeah, and this also, it does something to really hurt the libertarian argument here, which is just like, just legalize everything and people will be fine. Libertarians, I know, will just kind of come in and say, oh, well, you have to blame the welfare state. It's like, well, look, Aborigines have the same access to the welfare state as others. Yeah, okay, fine, they have special privileges in that are not fair. But even when you account for that, when you look at the ones who are not on the dole, they still have extremely high rates of alcoholism. So that argument just doesn't work here. And what they have shown is that when you ban or not outright ban in some cases, but simply restrict the sale of alcohol, what a surprise! You get less alcohol-related crime. It's clearly shown here.
Calm the fuck down.
And if it wasn't the case, the police would not be calling for it. Okay, so still in WA here. They're cracking down a little bit more on skippers, boat drivers. So apparently in the past 7 years, we've had 57 deaths on Australian waters, and that's often to do with speeding and alcohol being involved too. And unfortunately, a lot of the time, the two going together. So we had that Liberal MP, his son, who killed a girl in the boat that he was driving. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I remember that one.
He was only 17 or something. Yeah, he was completely drunk and then driving his parents' boat, because he's got rich parents, and crashed it. So yeah, you're getting this a lot more. And I have noticed, not that I go to the beach all that often, but you are noticing cop boats out a lot more often now, like in the Swan River and stuff. You're seeing that a lot.
I went down to one of these seaside restaurants with the girl a little bit ago, and I actually I made a mental note of it. I was just like, I saw 5 police boats launch at once, and I was just like, woo, I've actually never seen a police boat at this harbour in my entire fucking life. And now, today, I'm seeing 5 launch at once.
Right, yeah. So they're increasing fines here. So these are for people who are, committing those kind of offences. The maximum penalty would be $36,000 fine and 3 years in jail. So yeah, had that guy. That kid who did it, I think, was still 17. So he was very lucky he did that under the age. But then when it comes to driving under the influence, you can actually face fines of between $3,750 and $7,500. Wow, that's fucking
Yep.
big. That's bigger than driving, surely.
Yeah,
That's
it
got to
is.
be, yeah.
I think like fucking like for like a first time offender, it's like basically like an $1,000 fine or something for DUI driving.
Yeah. And I mean, like boating stuff is getting a lot more popular too. I guess because people are able to afford it a bit more, things like jet skis and whatnot. And you can do a lot of damage with those vehicles if you're going a high enough speed. So, yeah, it
It's
makes sense
basically
to
a
further
giant
regulate it.
fucking block of fiberglass with a fucking overpowered engine attached to it. Like,
Yes,
yeah, you can really fuck some shit up with that.
you can. Um, okay, so look, Tasmania is looking to, reform. It's well part of this decade-long reform on the state's youth justice system. So even though they don't have that many people in youth detention over there, for some reason they still copped a lot of news coverage in the past couple of years. So Tasmania is still um, looking to reform and do things like create facilities to provide alternatives to imprisonment. So we covered last time that Banksia Hill here in WA, they're building a facility next door to Banksia Hill
Yep.
that is to deal with complex detainees. Well,
Ferals.
they're not quite doing that over in Tasmania, but they're still coming up with these alternatives. And they're also saying that staff intimidation is on the rise over there. Yeah, again, because you're making people afraid. Every time you go on about like the safety of detainees or something like that, the detainees hear about it, because they've got TVs in their cells. They watch the TV, and when that's going on, they know that they can get away with more,
Yeah,
and that's what they do.
that's license. That statement is licensed to them, and
Yeah,
they're not. Again, just thinking that like they're like, oh, they're just innocent kids and etc. And like, oh, they're just a bit wayward. It's like, no, a lot of these kids are just straight up fucking psychopaths. You just caught them early.
right. So they have one facility, just like WA. They only have one facility in Tasmania. That is slated to be shut down by 2026 and replaced with what the ABC refer to here as more therapeutic options.
Oh
Now,
fuck.
now look, that will obviously mean that some of them are going to just be let go, maybe, because you can't even put an ankle bracelet on them. To put that on someone who's under 18 is just deemed to be inhumane. So I doubt they would do that. But look, they're going to have to build some sort of facility to house some of them. All right. You can't literally have a regime where you have no incarcerations of youth detainees whatsoever. How can you possibly do that? Some of these kids are rapists and murderers because they, believe it or not, some people do that under the age of 18. Do you
Mm.
really think we could have them free walking the streets? So
I
yeah,
know
they're
that.
going they're going to have to replace it with something.
All right, little mate, you're gonna have to come to a therapy session. But if you don't feel like that for mental health illnesses, we can, just book another one for you, and just please make sure you don't fucking like, rape some fucking little schoolgirl in the meantime.
Yeah, please don't do that. I'm sure we can take them at their word.
I'm sure that conversation has already happened.
Okay, let's move to the exciting topic of drugs. Only one story here, and that is, well, actually, this just caught my eye because I'd never heard of this before. But there is apparently an overdose reversal drug. Well, not apparently, it does exist. It's called, I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong, uh, naloxone. I swear these names of medical products, they just make them up. They just always put like a lot of X's or Z's in them to give it a sort of clinical name.
Just rape it with fucking vowels. Rape it with vowels and odd consonants. Yeah, like again, here's a nice little fucking joke, or like a little like conversation starter at a party. Have you realized that the name for most medication could also be the name for a powerful wizard?
Probably. Like Wizard Prozac.
Malaxone the Wise.
Yeah.
Xanax the Mighty.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of one. What's that one? Oh, Pimozide. That antipsychotic.
Pimozide the Necromancer. See what I mean? See what I mean?
That's the one that could be used to cure trannies, by the way. They used it. That's why I was just trying to think of the name of it. Because what's funny is that Pimozide is actually an antipsychotic used to treat schizophrenia. And if you look at the studies on like the brains of transgender people, they've got a
Pimozide the mind healer.
Anyway, in Victoria, they have just launched a program that makes that drug, naloxone, or however you say it, freely available to opioid users. I think that what they really mean is addicts over there. Yeah. And apparently the drug works well. Like, if you're experiencing an overdose, you can just quickly pop one of these. I would assume, though, you'd need, like, particularly for heroin overdoses, because, we've all seen Train Spotting, how that works. You better make sure that there's someone around you, because you're basically just completely incapacitated if you have a heroin overdose. So I don't know, do these people sort of like if you have like an EpiPen because you're allergic to bees, do these people just carry this reversal drug in their pockets?
You can see the documentaries when they're going into like the completely drug idle parts of America, and then like for every drug addict there's like another drug addict who like doesn't get high at the same time with like a Narcan kit.
Oh. Okay, yeah, well, because I mean, like when they give them methadone or whatever, I mean, they're just kind of they're substituting one opioid for another. Isn't that essentially what they're doing?
Pretty much.
It's just like lower potency, and that's about it.
A lot of them are just slower release. So like you're not like you're slowly weaning your neurons off of that fucking chemical.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, again, look, my usual critique here is secondary solution for where we should be looking for a primary one. And the primary problem here is lack of social capital and breakdown of social cohesion. That's what turns people to using drugs, lack of community and stuff like that. Why don't we do something like that instead of having to put all this money into trying to reverse an overdose? I want to focus on having people not overdose in the first place. Okay, so as I said at the beginning, when we went through the agreements made for the National Cabinet, they have agreed to a national gun registry that is effectively going to be entirely funded by the federal government. So Victoria has been pleading with the Commonwealth because they just don't have any money left. They're the most debt-ridden state in the country. Queensland said, can you please do it? Because in Queensland, they still have a pen and paper system. No shit, they do. They have not even digitized their
in the year of our Lord, 2023.
Yes. This is finally a time where it's appropriate to do a current year post, Do
they not have a copy machine over there? Do they not have like a fucking auto-dictating program over there or some shit like that? Like, what the fuck is going on?
I mean, they are using like photocopy and stuff for documents and stuff, but they don't actually have it like, on an
Excel sheet
or anything. Yeah, it's not up on a screen anywhere, which is mind-boggling. But yeah, we're going to get that. The Department of the Attorney General, so that means our Jewish Attorney General, Mark Dreyfus, his office is going to be setting that up. So look, this probably didn't come as a surprise to anyone that this was going to happen. But when you have a look at some of the submissions that have been made, and that includes the police, local police. So the Police Federation of Australia, which is sort of like the national, it's not the union, but, it's like another sort of like the equivalent of the AMA, I guess, the Doctors Association. They're saying that not only should this registry have a list of the person and then the guns and the ammunitions that they have in their possession, but it should also keep a record of what social and political groups they are a member of.
Oh, there we go.
For example, so if they have links to, well, to quote here from the report, sovereign citizens, or if they are police haters, etc., then that means a special note needs to be made of them. And of course, they keep referencing that shooting that we had in Queensland last year.
Y'all just said some of your boys got murked.
Yes, definitely. And considering the fact that this is a Labor government, putting this... Oh, actually, not even that. A coalition government would have gone along with this. I've made the point last week that heavy gun restrictions, laws heavily, outlawing and restricting gun ownership in Australia, absolutely has bipartisan support, even in the National Party. Sure, a lot of Nationals voters think it's bullshit, but the National Party in this regard is just bought and sold. And that happened in 96 when John Howard introduced the buyback scheme. That support for free gun ownership in the National Party, that became dead and buried in 1996. It's been gone for a long time. So, yeah. If you want to make a bet on will they actually include that information on whether or not you're part of a fringe group, absolutely. That's going to happen no matter what. Even if they don't get to this to the next term of government and it turns out to be Peter Dutton, he will introduce the same thing. I mean, he's a Queensland cop himself. Okay. So, Nolsey, were you surprised to see Annastacia Palaszczuk, quote, resign, unquote?
For all the fucking dumb shit that's been happening recently, there's not a lot that can surprise me. This doesn't really either.
Yeah, look, it didn't really surprise me. So, look, when we were planning to do this show originally last week, what I was going to talk about was a planned union rally, which I believe has already been, by the way. And when I say union rally, I mean multiple unions. So up until not long ago, it seemed to be exclusively the CFMEU and, more militant unions like the ETU, the Electrical Trades Union. They were getting on the back of Annastacia Palaszczuk. As far as I know, oh God, if my memory serves correctly here, I might be wrong, but Annastacia Palaszczuk is from the left faction of the Labor Party. However, she has broadly been seen as a centrist premier. She has governed from the middle ground, much like what was said about Mark McGowan. He was unaligned, actually. He wasn't officially part of any faction. However, he did receive backing from the left faction, which is the dominant faction in WA, in Victoria, and I believe in Queensland as well. So Palaszczuk, despite being of that faction, or at least backed by them, was disappointing in that she did not concede as much to the unions as what they would have liked. So they had this rally that was pretty vocal. They've done this before. They have occupied government buildings as well to show that they are opposed to a lot of what she's doing. But also you just had Labor Party heavyweights, the faceless men, albeit, faceless men of Queensland rather than the federal government. You also had former Labor ministers. So Bob Gibbs and Robert Schwarten, they also joined the queue of people basically saying her time is up, she's got to go. So when I read these stories last week, that was when I kind of said, yeah, it looks like the pressure is really on here, because when the union movement and Labor stalwarts and factional heavies and faceless men are calling on you to be sacked or to step down, the pressure's on. Well, not a huge surprise then that on the Sunday, she resigned. And look, the main reason I'm mentioning this is because she said that she did this completely of her own will. I don't believe that at all. She actually said that the thought really kind of hit her at the National Cabinet because while she was sitting there, of course, she's a long-running premier. She's been around for about 9 years. She was sitting down and she was saying, wow, this is the 4th Prime Minister that I've dealt with at National Cabinet. I've been around for a while, haven't I? And she did the usual stuff about wanting to spend more time with family that they always do. Okay, why is it that she was then consistently saying that she would not back down and she would remain as leader and take the Labour Party to the next election? She did that very, very consistently. And I honestly think she did want to hold on to it. But in the end, she was pushed. And a lot of commentators at The Australian have been saying the same thing. So anyway, what of her legacy? So in 2012, Labor actually lost to the Liberal Party under the leadership of Campbell Newman. It was quite an extraordinary election, actually. You had the Queensland floods at the time, if we remember those really horrific floods back in 2011, I think either that or 2012. And you had this funny situation where you had Anna Bligh, who was the premier who took over from Peter Beattie. She was actually really popular, and like the support for her and her handling, the emergency handling of the Queensland floods was actually very popular. And she did very well in approval ratings. But then at the same time, the Labor Party did badly in terms of polling. It was an extraordinary thing where you saw like a really popular premier, but people still hated their party and weren't willing to vote for them. So the Liberals, I think, were kind of looking on this and saying, okay, the one way the Labor Party might escape this is with the fact that they've got a crisis premier, a popular crisis premier. What can we do to neutralise that? Well, they went with the Lord Mayor of Brisbane, who was Campbell Newman at the time. He went from this guy who basically no one knew about. He's about as famous as what like Basil Zemplis is here in Perth. So basically only people in Brisbane knew about him at that point. All of a sudden then he was on the news every night nationally. And then he was seen second only to Anna Bligh as the leader who was bringing Queensland out of this horrific natural disaster. So he wasn't a member of Parliament. He was Lord Mayor of Brisbane. What they did was they unofficially made him the leader of the Liberal Party, gave him pre-selection in a Liberal Party safe seat, and he ran as opposition leader outside of the Parliament. And then he won. It was really, really weird. And then when he won, Labor actually were reduced to only 7 seats in the House. And I say the House rather than the lower house because they have no upper house in Queensland. Isn't that amazing? There's so many little differences like Queensland has compared to the rest of Australia. Like they're the only state where more people live outside the capital metropolitan area than inside.
Yeah.
The only one.
Always this weird kind of rainforest country place.
Yeah. The only other state that comes close is Tasmania, but still majority of Tasmanians live in the metropolitan city of Hobart. Yeah. Still most of them are there. So Annastacia Palaszczuk became the leader, and then she was actually able to bring Labor back from the brink of only 7 seats in 2015, and Campbell Newman was turfed out after only 1 term. Now, he had a lot of own goals. He did some massive budget cuts that hurt the public sector a lot, kind of like what Tony Abbott did in his first term, and he never really truly recovered from that. She then went to another election in 2017, and then another one 4 years later. So she won 3 elections. And she's coming up to her 9th year. So in that respect, you have to give her credit simply in that regard. In terms of actually delivering electorally, she did very, very well. In terms of how I would rate her simple performance on a policy level, well, same as any other any other premier in the last 20 years, pretty much. I can't say I'm going to rate her any much higher or lower than anyone else. Anything you got to say about Anna, Nolsey?
Women in politics, never again.
Oh, actually, no. Thanks for reminding me. Longest serving female premier ever.
Yep. 39th member.
If you think that's some great achievement, I certainly don't. But yeah, she does have that under her belt as well. Okay, so just quickly on the people who are going up to contend for the leadership, you got Cameron Dick, Stephen Miles, Shannon Fentiman. So as far as I know, they're all still in the race here. I'm thinking very much Shannon Fentiman might have the advantage. She's only 40, which, for a leader, that's a very young age to be. She's got the backing of the left faction, which, as I said, is the dominant faction over there. And also the powerful Australian Manufacturers Workers Union, who are definitely factional heavyweights in Queensland, as they are actually in most states. That's right. So Fentiman, I think, is really kind of going up against Stephen Miles, who is also backed from the left. So what might happen there is what happened in WA, which is eventually at some point the left faction union heavies will get behind one of them, and then the person who they didn't put their support behind will pull out of the ballot. And they'll say, no, I'm not contesting anymore. How can I when I don't have support of the faction? And then the guy from the right is Cameron Dick. He's 56 years old. The seat of Green Slopes. Is that maybe one of those racist names in Queensland? Like, I'm not going to repeat it here because we're on YouTube, but something head, N-word head, that they had to change. Anyway, this is the guy from the right faction, and has support from the Australian Workers Union, which is Bill Shorten's old faction as well. But yeah, that's who I can't say I've really researched this heavily, but I think they'd rather go with another female leader as well. She's young, backing of the powerful heavies. Yeah, I think Shannon Fentiman is gonna be the one. Okay, let's move on to WA. Oh, Nolsey, you must be glad that Hannah Beazley has made it to the front bench in the WA State Parliament. Are you excited about that? You're on mute, Nolsey. Okay, yeah. No, you. I don't know if you heard that, but Hannah Beazley is on the front bench in State Parliament now.
What?
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry.
I think you're cutting in and out.
Someone?
No. They had a reshuffle.
Oh, okay. I was wondering.
The story I've got here is Labor Party front bench reshuffle here in WA. I'm not going to go through the names because, to be honest, I haven't even heard of some of these people. But the one that was most of note was Hannah Beazley. She's been elevated to the front bench. And no surprise there. I mean, if you guys didn't know, she is the daughter of Kim Beazley.
Yeah.
Who is considered a Labor legend. He's also the former governor and US ambassador as well. Yeah. So, certainly very high-ranking guy. But you're not a big fan of Hannah Beazley.
No. God damn it. She looks just like her fucking father. I just got reminded of that.
She does look like it's so weird.
She looks like her dad in a fucking wig.
Yeah, like she's not quite as fat, although she is overweight. But yeah, if she were just to kind of balloon out a bit more, she'd basically look like a younger version of her dad with a wig. Which is not a very flattering description, to say the least.
Again, it's kind of weird to be in the front bench considering she only joined 2 years ago.
Right.
Actually, no. It's not weird because of her fucking dad. I guess there's just a nepo fucking slide in, isn't it?
Yeah. Kim Beazley's dad is He was involved with federal labor, I believe. I think he was a minister. I can't remember, but I know at Murdoch University they've got a lecture theatre named
Yeah.
after him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Classes on theology and a lecture hall named after a very fat, awkward-looking man.
So no, the Beazleys have definitely had like a long history of activity in the Labor Party. So just quickly in Tasmania, the former leader, David O'Byrne, this was a guy who actually had to leave the leadership because of sexual harassment changes. We would have covered this at the time because this is back in 2021. He resigned and went to the backbench after claims that he was making sending sexually suggestive texts to a young female probationary member. And he basically admitted, yeah, I did that. So,
oh god, those years on the backbench have not fucking done well to him.
Yeah. So look,
Holy shit, he looks like trash now. He at least looked like a young virile sexual predator a couple of years ago, but like
let me have a
fucking
look.
Jesus Christ.
I don't remember the. Oh yeah, you're right. Oh man, that beard. He needs to get rid of that. I don't know if he always had that, but that's a shocking beard. Anyway, look, he was hoping to keep his pre-selection because he was just like, well, look, I resigned to the backbench. What more do you want from me? No, they wanted his pre-selection as well. Yeah, and Rebecca White, who is the current leader and therefore opposition leader as well in Tasmania, she wanted this. She had been calling on him to quit Parliament altogether for the same reason, for the sexual harassment that he was involved in. Albeit it does look like, I've got to say, it is a bit of a minor level. I guess it all depends on. I mean, if it was sexually suggestive, just because it's got the word suggestive there, it's like it can't have been that bad, could it?
Dude, I send sexually suggestive messages to my homies.
I don't know, but I mean, it's just fuck. It's the neo Puritanism in a way, where we spaz out over little things. Okay. One boring story on the Victorian Liberals that I think we'll skip over, and let's just go straight to the more interesting one.
Victorian Liberals, who?
Yeah, well, this one is interesting because it pertains to neo-Nazis. So the Victorian MP Moira Deeming, we remember her. She was the one who turned up to the anti-tranny rally. Some of our boys apparently gate crashed it, as they say. In other words, they turned up, wanting to protest as well. That's all they did. They didn't gate crash it. And then John Pesutto. Well, John Pesutto came out and said that Moira Deeming was associated with neo-Nazis and extremists. She called on him to retract those comments. He didn't do so. He basically said, well, you've got to be the one who has to apologize over all of this. So she made a threat. She was like, withdraw those comments about neo-Nazis or I'm going to sue you. Well, guess what? The writ has now been issued. So we have a defamation suit on our hands here. Now, last time I checked, I have not seen how John Pesutto is going to be responding to this. He is obviously going to defend himself, but I don't know if he's going to be using a truth defense.
Again, like he's really fucking not going to be able to do that because I don't think there's a fucking like a bone in her body with even a fucking twinge as to what those guys were about.
No, but I mean, if you look at the language that he used, he was clearly trying to say that she was at least like having a loose association with what they refer to as neo-Nazis. Because guys from the NSN and AEM turned up. So, or EAM, sorry. So I think she's got a good chance. She's got a good chance, and also I doubt very much that John Pesutto can fund this adequately. I reckon Moira Deeming can get a lot of grassroots support here. unfortunately, these are still from a lot of people kind of clinging to the idea that the Liberal Party can still be paced if we just kind of put enough faith in them and give them enough money and run the right people and all this kind of thing. Nonetheless, she will have that grassroots support. Therefore, she'll have people willing to chip in to the legal fund. Now, members from the Liberal Party, including sitting members, I remember like there were people talking to the Australian anonymously over this, were saying that they would be completely opposed to the Liberal Party funding the defence for John Pesutto in any way. They say, no, if this actually goes to court, he is going to have to raise this money himself. Now, John Pesutto, I cannot see raising anywhere near the amount of grassroots support that Moira Deeming would. I just can't see it, how that would happen. So,
even like just as a microcosm of this entire incident, there's still actually quite a few TERFs out there.
Yeah. And I mean, she's the one who goes around wearing that T-shirt that says woman. You know, she's like, I'm a real feminist, you know, because I actually know what a woman is and all this stuff. It's like, come on. Second wave feminism. I mean, for God's sake, Jermaine Greer identifies as a second wave feminist and a TERF. And she is fucking batshit crazy, for God's sake.
Oh, God. Yeah. Jesus Christ. So, like, we got Moira Deeming versus, I guess, the demographics that make up Macho Man, Tranny Savage.
Okay, you could say that.
I was talking to the guy who made that bit back in the day today. It was a pretty funny history behind that.
I was going to say that would be a good show title, but probably not one we could use, actually. Probably couldn't use that word. But yeah, anyway, I was really hoping this was going to happen because I really want to see what the result of this is.
I want to see a politician get his fucking balls flogged in court for saying something dumb, and I want to see it not necessarily as someone I see as an ally or someone I see in the same ballpark. I want to see fucking like throwing that word around. I just want to see him punished for it.
Right, but Nolsey, you've got to remember, we are talking about the Victorian judiciary here. Judiciary.
Yeah.
The same ones that found George Pell guilty twice. So, you know, that's... And especially because of the fact that this case actually specifically pertains to association with so-called neo-Nazis. You know, this is going to arouse some emotions and, you know, get the emotional part of the brain going rather than the logical side. That's what I'm really afraid of here. And yeah, so even though, as I said, she'll get more money and grassroots support over this, as she should, I don't know. It's a big risk when you're trying to ask for something like that in Victoria, in the Victorian courts. That's, what I'll say here. So I'm not going to say either way here. I'm really kind of split on what way this could turn. I really don't know.
It's kind of one of the things when like you talk to like someone in Australia or you try to explain the Australian legal system about the law. And you know, some countries are better, some countries are definitely worse, but it very much is a case of it's not what the text on the actual legislation or law says. It's about who has the gavel. And yeah, unfortunately, that is not a very, very sympathetic court whatsoever. And there's you got two fucking conflicting issues that they are just going to see read over, quote unquote, defending accusations of being a Nazi and transgenderism.
Yeah. And I mean, like over at Sky News, they were basically trying to put it across that like, John Pesutto doesn't have a chance here. No, I don't think so. I really don't think so. Okay. So staying in Victoria and moving over to the Labor Party, we had a report that was just issued by the state's ombudsman, and it found that the Premier's private office has more than 84 staff members, and that compares to the 50.8 in the Prime Minister's office. How the hell could you have 0.8 of a staff member? But anyway, I'm just reading the numbers that are read here, so maybe I should put a sick in brackets there, I'm not sure. And 34 in New South Wales. So that means that this is, by the way, this was under the reign of Daniel Andrews. Okay, as far as I know, actually no, sorry, I don't know if Jacinta Allen has since reduced the number of staffers, but that number of 84 in Victoria is actually bigger than the Prime Minister's office and the New South Wales office combined. Now, part of the reason for that was the sheer amount of what they called COVID polling that was done. We got more information here on the amount that was spent and also the varying information services that the Premier's office was hiring during this time. So this was to kind of find like which restrictions did people really, really hate and which ones of them were they, okay with or prepared to tolerate.
Which ones did they fail the shit test on?
Right. So, I mean, why else was this being done? We are talking about the most lockdown state and city in the world. Obviously, COVID and the restrictions were going to bite Victoria more comparatively. So, and, Daniel Andrews was always obsessed with maintaining power, even though he had to kind of go in the end. He just kind of saw his position as untenable, I guess, much like Annastacia Palaszczuk. But he was so intent on like kind of manipulating the public to the extent possible that he had all of these staff members around him and was spending a shitload of money on all of this COVID polling. And still a lot of it, by the way, is secret. Like, we know the places he was going to do the work for him. We know how many people he was hiring and how much he spent. But we don't really know much about the information they gathered and collated in the end. And the Australian newspaper, as you can imagine, has really been calling on Jacinta Allen to release that information. And yeah, I would say that's true. Now, the other damning finding of the Ombudsman report found that many people who work in Victoria's public service are working under a culture of fear. And in many cases, that means they're afraid to actually tell the relevant ministers or commissioners that something is wrong. So, whistleblowing and actually pointing out mistakes or maybe even corrupt practices that are going on in the public sector are simply not being reported. And that's because they're afraid they'll be reprimanded by their superiors. Again, I have no surprise that this is coming from Victoria. And, no doubt still kind of a leftover from the Andrews days.
Yeah. Yeah, you got rid of the man, not the fucking contentious holding on to information about a giant shit test.
Right. Okay, so look, just a couple of quick stories, and then we'll probably, we know we've been going for a while here, so just do a couple of quick stories, and then we'll end on Brittany Higgins, which is a good way to, end the year on a climax, an unconsensual one. Okay, so
fuck.
No, not really. It never happened. So, Peter, as in P-E-T-A, Murray. Probably never heard of her. I'd heard of her, but I didn't really know much about her. Victorian seat of Dunkley. She died after a 4-year battle with breast cancer, the age of 50. Very young age, of course, to die at. And who knows, maybe if we didn't put all that money into AIDS research, we could have found a cure for her. Or at least been able to help her live a little longer. Christina Keneally has come back into federal parliament, but not as a senator or as an MP, but to take part in government table round talks to encourage private investment in priority areas. So this is like, encouraging the philanthropic sector of the business community, which is still, I would argue, profit motivated. Like when you
tax
look at
motivated.
Yeah, that as well, because you can just write it off. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, when it comes to how they direct their charitable funds, things like public housing is one of the areas that they're bringing up here. So I don't have any doubt that we'll see the return of Christina Keneally, because she's like in her 50s, I think. So, she's not that old for a politician. So I'd say she's still itching to get back in the game. And just some interesting figures in terms of Albanese's answering of questions during question time in federal parliament. So the coalition released data showing that his government is answering 43% fewer questions than the opposition did under, as the Morrison government did in the last term. So looking at the House of Reps, so it shows that between the 3rd of August and the 2nd of December 2021, when Scott Morrison was Prime Minister, the government answered 311 questions from the opposition. In the same period, Labor answered only 177 opposition questions. So, yeah, I guess that data speaks for itself in terms of
confidence.
We have a more evasive, secretive government than we did under Scott Morrison. So, okay.
Are they scared they're just going to get fucking BTFO'd over and over again? Is that what's happening here? Because that's my read on this.
You know what I think is actually a big factor in this is what's been like up until, we've spoken a lot about the cost of living, but what's been the number one issue in the political cycle of the past 18 months?
Failure of the government.
Well, I think it's got to be the voice.
Oh, yeah.
It's got to be, the Indigenous voice. Who's the Indigenous Affairs Minister? A woman who can barely speak, Linda Burney, okay? So an incredible amount of questions were dodged, not just by her, but also Albo on The Voice. They really didn't want much debate on it because they weren't capable, and it meant giving more airtime to Linda Burney. Sorry. So I think that would have had a big part to do with it. But
yep, that's actually likely it, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to skip ahead, and then we'll come back to Brittany Higgins. So, mention the story on PNG. Just quickly on euthanasia. So in New South Wales, police are saying that they lack the protocols to deal with incidents of vulnerable people who have been put under pressure to request voluntary assisted dying. So even though, there's a big regulatory process that they have to go through, they're still concerned that, say, some of these people lacking the appropriate cognitive faculties are perhaps listening a bit too much to family who are saying, maybe it's your time to go. It's your time to leave us now.
There's a pretty simple solution. The police are already trained on these techniques to begin with. It's a part of interrogation techniques. It's called read techniques. It'll take too long to explain. You can just Google it up. Read police interrogation techniques. It's a technique that allows you to pretty much make sure that like someone's comfortable. They are often in police tactics, they make them overly comfortable, thinking that like, oh, like I can admit to something and these people are going to help me and whatnot. But it can be used to like find out, hey, like look, like what are you actually thinking about this? Like who's telling you this? Where are you getting these ideas from, etc. That the police already know these techniques that could be used. So are they genuinely concerned about legal issues and etc., or like their ability to actually step in? I'd say that's the issue. That's the thing there, and in all honesty, I think they should. I've heard way too many stories. I've spoken to social workers before. I've spoken to a fucking Swede who was a social worker saying that like, yeah, like with the adult disabled, they're quite literally coached by their parents to like say the stuff needed to get them euthanized because the family just doesn't want to deal with them anymore.
Yeah, okay. I mean, yeah, I can see that. And that's always, one of the issues that I have had with this is that people often, maybe they are not in a position to actually say whether or not it's their time to go. Other people, it's a lot more obvious.
Mm.
And yeah, look, man, if I'm ever in a position where I can't wipe my own ass, that's basically when I want to go. Why I don't think life's worth living at that point. You have lost your independence to that much of a degree. I just want to go. But look, like a small win that you could say the religious lobby did have on this was that you can't make any of these decisions like over Zoom. I can't remember what they
Yeah,
refer to it exactly, virtual something or other.
telecommunication or
Yeah,
teleconference.
yeah. So no, they're saying that all of this stuff, the people who make the decisions and write the reports and everything, they must be in the same room as the person. You can't do
Yeah.
any of this stuff remotely. And absolutely, I agree.
And in all honesty, like and this is something I've been talking about with other people recently. The fact that you got this new generation of kids that has little to no social skills, and that's because like yeah, there's quite a lot of information you can give by verbal cues, by like gesturing and etc. But like there's a level of human communication that's actually higher fidelity than that you only get from face to face discussions.
Right. And that's why I say, don't tell me that you have a social life on the internet. All right. Even if you
You
are
don't.
doing like voice and video chat, there's still an enormous amount of things that you don't pick up from people unless you are sitting next to them. So, yeah. Okay.
Including the
So,
hygiene.
oh, one other thing, sorry, on euthanasia was another concern here because they're actually reforming these laws further in the ACT. As you can imagine, this has been legal in the ACT for a very long time, but now they're trying to ramp it up even more. And this is to the point where conscientious objectors would not be able to protest. So, like, if you're a doctor who, has a moral issue, an ethical issue, with writing a report that could lead to someone going down that path of assisted dying, you're not given the right to be a conscientious objector and say no, I refuse to write that report because I have an ethical consideration here. So
And again, if you've taken the plutocratic oath, you actually should. That's a part of your oath.
right, okay. Well, look, another Senate inquiry. This was into increasing disruption in Australian classrooms. We're doing education now, sorry.
Yeah.
So this report started, this Senate inquiry started about 12 months ago. We have an interim report that was just released last week, and it has called on the government to fast track improved teacher training. It has also recommended the introduction of a behaviour curriculum for students to understand. Now, this is specifically to do with kids who are breaking the rules, being disruptive, and yes, even being violent. We covered not long ago that there's an increasing amount of teachers who are taking self-defense training
Yep.
to deal with unruly children. Now, one of the reasons for this is like because teachers are all women now, of course, so
Yeah.
they're obviously just less physically equipped to do so. But could it have anything to do with the amount of non-white kids we're importing as well?
Also,
And
yeah.
also just how like we've been letting discipline fall the whole time. I mean, teachers do kind of seem to be increasingly permissive, and when you have that kind of culture of permissiveness, you let kids get
Kids will
away
take
with more.
advantage.
They'll take advantage, they'll shit test you, and they'll push things to the limit. And unfortunately, sometimes it goes to the point of physical confrontation. And
And
that's what
kids
we've
break
got.
rules for a reason.
Yeah. And so now, again, secondary solutions, we want shit like a behavior curriculum. That's not going to do fucking shit. You mean all you've got to do is lay down what the rules are, make sure they know what the rules are, and then punish them accordingly when they break those rules. That's it.
Yeah, and may Ella forgive me for uttering this, but I was recently looking over some like Reddit stories and etc. Totally anecdotal, I know, but like there was this one female teacher that said like, oh, I've always been having problems with my class. It's very difficult to maintain their attention. And there was always some troublemakers in the class that would, I couldn't go 5 minutes without them causing some kind of disruption that I had to, put down and negotiate with them to sit down and shut the fuck up. And then, I came back from my leave and I noticed my class was really well behaved, and I'm feeling very conflicted about this because it turns out I had a male substitute teacher who basically took the class clown and, picked him up and fucking threw him out of the classroom for misbehaving. And I'm not sure how I feel about this. I could probably rationalize that maybe this was needed at least once, but I'm always one of these people that physically harming or threatening children is just not a part of my ideology. Blah blah blah. I'm just thinking you should fucking call that dude up and fucking thank him, because that's what that kid needed. That kid needed to have the fear of God put into him at least once in his life.
Yeah. I mean, look, I don't know if you're advocating this, but I don't support corporal punishment for children.
No.
Or I do if they're criminals.
Oh yeah.
And I have advocated for that before. But I don't want to
If you violate the statutes of man, you will be punished, but to the full extent of your violation by man.
Right. But I don't believe in caning kids, for example.
No.
So
that's over the top.
It is, and it does to an extent. I'll agree with Stefan Molyneux. Teach that violence is a solution to problems, and you shouldn't give that kind of message to kids.
Violence is the ultimate authority.
But I am absolutely for handing out the detention and the litter duty and, taking away privileges and whatnot, because they need it.
There's a point when bargaining with a child is not going to get the outcomes that you want. You actually have to enforce consequences. Now, those might not and realistically should not be actual straight up abuse or violence, but they should be consequences. They should, at least give the kid pause to say, hey, I'm not feeling very good about this right now. Maybe I should reflect on my actions and actually give the kid the instruction that, hey, you're not going to like this, but hey, while you're doing it, just reflect on the actions that got you here.
Right. So yeah, you want them to actually reconsider. Maybe when they go to do that, fucking smack the teacher again, because yes, it is actually coming down to that. Maybe they'll actually think twice about it.
Until we get the real psychopathic fucking 2 generations removed from a tribal, and then we'll probably actually have to bring back the cane.
Okay, so we've mentioned before the national curriculum on sexual consent. So this is, it's to do with the universities, but it's to do with high schools and primary schools as well, unfortunately. So the head of the Catholic education in Tasmania is saying that some of the material included in the national curriculum contains amoral information. Now, some schools have already started implementing this national curriculum, which includes strengthening of consent education. And, you see, unfortunately, to an extent, they need that in Tasmania, because you need affirmative consent in Tasmania.
Yeah.
And in the Northern Territory, right? Now, I mean, think of how many times wouldn't just about everyone have broken that rule? I mean, it's so ridiculous. I mean, does anyone have ask permission from their girlfriend when you go to have sex with her? For God's sake, it kind of kills the moment, doesn't it? But technically, you are actually breaking the law if you don't do that.
We're both experienced men in this slot. Do you actually get a relationship with a woman because you're some little prissy pansy boy that is tiptoeing on fucking glass the entire time, or are you the assertive type that says yeah, we're just gonna do this?
That's the thing. She doesn't want you to ask. She'd fucking give her fucking muff will go dry. Okay, if you do that, it's such a stupid thing to do. But yeah, I mean, so therefore I can see the need as to why they need to actually educate people.
Legal documents you can sign just before this.
Yeah.
And
Stop treating fucking sexual relations like a fucking visit to the medical clinic. Fuck me.
Yeah, so look, non-government schools, which basically just means private religious schools, they do have a bit of leeway in terms of like what they can and can't implement. But there's stuff that they have to as well. And I guess we just have to wait to see, if they're going to be forced into, implementing some of this amoral stuff. So I'll just read what Jared Gaskin said. He's from the Archdiocese of Hobart. So he said, consent is proposed as the only standard we should use to judge whether a sexual act is right or wrong, legal or illegal. In Catholic morality, consent is necessary, but not sufficient to make the sexual act right or wrong. Yep. It is the long-held teaching of Christ that sexual activity is only legitimately expressed within the loving relationship between husband and wife. So what they're getting at here is that like this stuff says that like so long as two people want to do it, then it's fine, and it doesn't matter who they are.
I know it was a Christian comic, but it was like really fucking cringe. But I still find it kind of funny that they've managed to like out Puritan the Puritans in this one, which was like is it truly consensual sex? And then it's like the guy saying I consent, and the woman saying I consent, and then Jesus in the background saying I don't. I love how they've like employed that to be like, yeah, fuck you. Like, we're gonna have like actually a more traditional sense of like what this is about than you can with your fucking dumb feminist bullshit. That's actually very, very amusing to me.
I guess so, yeah. But I mean, I guess what they're worried about here is that they have to teach their students, or at least they're afraid this is what's going to happen under the national curriculum. That they have to teach students that like all sex is okay as long as it's consensual. That's the underlying message. And that's what they've got a problem with. Yeah. Okay, let's go to Brittany Higgins. I was about to read another story on neo-Nazis, but then I was like, no, I don't want to give that any more airtime. So it's just another smear piece, so I'm just going to leave it. Okay, so the defamation suit is still going. Obviously, this is Bruce Lehrmann suing Lisa Wilkinson in Channel 10. And rightly so, you should. There was really just one story I wanted to talk about here, because for the most part, if you look at the testimony that's been given by both Bruce Lehrmann and Brittany Higgins, we know it all already. It's all out there. It was either discussed during the trial or in dribs and drabs through media releases. We know about it. Now, here's the one thing we did not have a figure on. And that is the payout that Brittany Higgins received from the Commonwealth government. Now, I have to remind people that this payout was for two reasons. One, it was because, this alleged rape that, as I'm sure we probably all agree, never happened.
Have hammered into the fucking ground, yeah.
Yeah, and therefore the department of Linda Reynolds at that time, which was defense, failed in its duty of care to her, blah-de-blah. But it also came from her time working for the office of Michaelia Cash, because she said that she was subject to bullying and harassment in that job. That's actually completely unrelated to the alleged rape that happened. So initially, we were just told that this was around $2 million. You read some other estimates as well of where this was going around. We never actually heard from Brittany Higgins on this. So she has taken a stand, as I'm sure most of us know, and she was cross-examined about this. She admitted that the figure was $2.3 million. So
here's a lot of cash.
So it was more. So, most estimates were saying it was around $2 million. So it was even more, 2.3. It's actually higher than that. I'll get to that for a second.
That's like an extra flat in a really shitty part of town.
Yeah. So what Brittany Higgins actually said here when she was being cross-examined was they, meaning the government, didn't go through the proper processes. So that's actually what they settled. Why they settled with me. Now, I have to remind people that there was a meeting that was set up between the relevant parties and Brittany Higgins. And this was done in Mark Dreyfus's office, the Attorney General. And they said that basically that Brittany Higgins' account here would have to go uncontested. So when they turned up to mediation hearings, they were told basically not to state a case, not to argue against anything that Brittany Higgins said in terms of how the duty of care was failing to protect her, and to basically agree to everything. So Michaelia Cash and Lynn Reynolds never disputed anything in the mediations. They never had any kind of legal representation. They never had any kind of mechanism whatsoever to say, no, we deny that. And as we know from various public statements that they've made, they do actually deny it all. But they never actually made that known during the mediation sessions. Why is that? Because Mark Dreyfus said, if you do that, the Commonwealth will not pay your legal fees. And as we know, those legal fees could have been in the hundreds of thousands, if not over $1 million. I don't know if we've got figures on that. I'd be very interested to see how much the Commonwealth government spent on that. But anyway, that is what happened, and so that's why they settled on that figure. Now,
and she just gets to walk away with that.
Yeah,
after all
that's
of this.
Right. Yeah, so look, I'll read out more
Jesus
of what
Christ,
Brittany
I should get
Higgins
fucking
said.
sodomized in Parliament if I get to walk away with fucking $2.3 million.
Yeah, so she said this. She said, this is Brittany Higgins when she was being cross-examined. They came to an agreement that a failure of a duty of care was made, and they did pay me. So then, this is from the Australian. Mrs. Higgins told the court that the gross settlement payment from the Commonwealth to prevent her bringing a claim of personal injuries, I see that, was $2.3 million. But after taxes and lawyers, she received $1.9 million.
Jesus Christ. Is that really a fucking complaint?
No, man, it gets better. It gets better. Here's what she said on this. These are two more quotes from Brittany Higgins. I know what was agreed on paper and what I actually received for two different things. I think it was around 2.3. I think that was the amount, and then taxes, and then the lawyer took some, but I'm not sure what that fee was. I was never focused on that fee. It was only what I received that I cared about. She only cared about how much money she got in the end. So that's how she knows it was 1.9. She definitely knows that. And she said, I think it was about 2.3 all up. Well, guess what? It was actually even more than that. Now, since she left the cross-examination, we have since had the deed of settlement submitted to the court. So here's the full amount. It was $2.445 million, not the 2.3, which is what she estimated. Okay? And if we're to believe her, apparently she didn't know this figure because she only cared about what she would get out of it, which was $1.9 million. Okay?
There's some kind of like Whore of Babylon statement that can be made here.
But in terms of what the Commonwealth paid, the taxpayer paid, it was $2.445 million. And what is that? That's a discrepancy of about 150 grand that she was off by. So that's a lot. And by the way, this total payment of personal injuries failing in the duty of care was an estimate based on how much money she would lose for her working life being ruined. Because one of the claims was that her time in Canberra, working for both Linda Reynolds and Michaelia Cash, had traumatized her to such an extent that she would never be capable of working again in her life. That's actually what the estimates were were based on. Now, since then, she has gone on to, write this bloody book with Peter Fitzsimon and Lisa Wilkinson. As we know, most of it is finished. It probably won't come out now because it looks like, the stuff is backfiring on her finally, but that's another story. She's also taken up posts at the UN and at Australian universities. So in other words, she's working, or at least, she's on the gravy train. She's out there with official paid positions. Yet she thinks it's okay for her to have pocketed all of this money. Okay, so that's where we'll leave it.
May we cast the basket into the sea where the whore of Babylon is lashed.
So yeah, look, that was definitely what I found was the most interesting thing to come from this defamation suit so far. And but yeah, that's all we've got. That's all we've got for 2023. So thanks to everyone who's listened during that time. We will make it back to you in about a month or so. All depends on, when we think the political news starts being worthy of coverage again. Yep. We'll come back with you. We should have a revamped website. Maybe it won't come back at the exact same time when we bring the show back on air, but definitely 2024 we'll be doing that, and a live show. A couple of other things. So, yeah.
Keep an eye on this space.
Yeah, watch this space. Thank you for listening, guys, and have a good 2024 and a delightful end to your 2023. We'll see you soon.